Are you drinking out of an art cup there?
Yeah, we got these at the premiere.
Oh, that's
They had
awesome! Yeah.
little goodie
So
bags. It's
cool.
pretty
Obviously,
neat.
congratulations.
Oh,
It's
thank you.
incredible. You did incredible work. I, you
Thanks.
know, it's if we're gonna get right into it, but what a monumental thing. And as a horror fan, as a film fan, I mean, just the records indie film is breaking. Like, it's so incredible to me.
It's nuts. It's
Yeah,
absolutely nuts.
yeah,
So
yeah. And what a thing that its opening weekend was against Joker's second week. I mean, just the serendipity of the two clowns. It's
yeah,
so fascinating to me. The $100 million movie against the $3 million.
It almost felt like a Barbenheimer moment, with just the way two things are being mentioned in the same breath.
yeah. Clown weekend.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
clown weekend. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
it is. It's crazy. It's crazy to even think that an independent, underrated horror film about a killer clown could be mentioned in mainstream media, let alone number one, let alone up against something like a DC property. Like Batman is basically what we're going up against.
Yeah.
It's kind of nuts, and it's
Yeah.
it's it's cool. It's an interesting time to be alive.
Absolutely. And kind of speaking of that, I'd like to kind of get your what was your kind of it sounds like very pre-organized, but I've got a few notes here and
Us.
there. Um,
Yeah.
my personal love of horror started with my eldest brother showed me what was called in the UK video nasties. So it was videotapes of horror films that were banned in the UK, and because there was a child murder years ago, Jamie Bulger this child was killed, and the two children that committed this murder blamed Child's Play, and around that time I was actually watching Child's Play as a child. So where did you kind of I went from a serial killer to this, but where did it start for you, like love of horror and getting started in that world, because obviously Jaws is a big thing for you as well.
Yeah, yeah, Jaws is huge. My love of horror I mean, it started with Jaws, but I've always sure I love horror, but I'm really just a fan of all film in general.
Mhm.
And movies were just very big in my house. I accidentally saw Jaws when I was 4 years old.
Wow.
And
Sweet.
it didn't I wasn't traumatized or anything. I just I kind of just was staring at it like, oh, this is interesting. Cool. I thought the shark was cool. And my mom explained that it was like special effects. It was always like ingrained into me that these things were fake and that it was made up and it wasn't a real thing.
Oh,
So
cool.
I think I had that, knowing that this was something that people could kind of make and create, you know helps, and knowing that it's not a real kid being eaten off a raft with a fountain of blood,
Hmm.
certainly. But it kind of, after that, it was just like, all right, well, I guess he can watch anything. So I was watching stuff that no kid should watch at my age,
Yeah.
like RoboCop with the dude melting, and like
Oh, yeah.
Terminator and Predator and Alien, and Tremors was a big one when that came out. So
Wow.
there was no,
Yeah.
there was no censorship for me, and I just, I never took anything from it. I never like felt violent at all towards anyone because of it. I never acted out on it. The most I would do is like maybe draw like the Terminator like blowing someone up or something, like.
Yeah, I
But
know.
like,
And
and
your
that
art
was
is
just
incredible. It's that your art. It's incredible, man.
that was like my contribution,
Mm.
so like I just I Jaws set it off, and then it was just movies, 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 and we were the type. I guess we were technically bootlegging the films. It was like, it was like the '80s, the late '80s, and we had a VCR, and we had Prism at the time, was like kind of like an HBO, and we would tape stuff off of HBO, and
Amazing.
my mom would take us to the video store and hit the dollar bin whenever all the new releases, when they had 20 copies of Mr. Mom, and 18 of them hit the bin.
Yeah.
We just rated it. It got to a point where I was probably like in probably like 9, 10, when we had enough films to where we had almost like a Dewey Decimal System in our house. Just collecting, like every other day my mom was coming home with like a new film, and so we had them numbered and we had a list, and I was the movie kid growing up, so my love of horror comes from that because I have a love of film. And I feel like most horror fans, like if you talk to a horror fan, chances are they like know like Indiana Jones by heart, or like Back to the Future, or other films that we all grew up
Totally.
with in the late 80s, early 90s. So yeah, to me, a love of horror is a love of film. So that's where it came from. And of course the special effects, like it's just one of the coolest film processes there is. As soon as you learn about latex and how they sculpt monsters and how they make these molds, and you see like the cover of Pumpkinhead on VHS, you're like, like it just, there's something about it, and how tangible it is, and how you can get your hands dirty and create something, and basically make a monster that makes, I don't know, it just, that grabbed me. So that probably made me more veer towards horror later on, for sure. Special effects, of course, like I was doing when I was younger, like probably 8, 9 years old. I was like making like wounds on myself and pretending I was hurt, and whatnot. I know Damien did similar things
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
his family. So I think this is the type of kid that likes to gross out other kids, and I was definitely that kid, which is probably one of the reasons why Damien and I get along.
That's actually
Wow.
something that I'm trying to do this Halloween. I saw grossing people out, but not as a kid through love of horror, but now really appreciating horror and loving it in, as we all get older, we appreciate things differently and things change, perspectives change. But
Mhm.
I saw some sort of I live on an army base, and just down the road, I'm not in the army,
Oh,
but
cool.
it's just like some of the houses were sold, and down the road, someone has hung a skeleton, but they've wrapped it in bin bags, so it looks like a small child's been hung. So I thought I'm going to take inspiration from that. I'm actually going to get police tape, and then I want to scare everyone like you did when you were kids. But I want to do that now as an adult
Yeah.
and with a bit of money. So I've got like a grave site. So that's my vibe for Halloween this year. Um,
That's awesome.
so was it?
Love it.
This is something Ian and I have talked about before. We loved looking at box art, especially in Blockbuster or whatever
Oh
our
yeah.
local rental store was. Was that
Walking the aisles.
yeah? Was that a big thing for you, seeing that artwork of horror
Of
or films generally?
course, of course. I think any kid, it was that perfect time when you're adolescents and you're like walking through the video store and you see like the cover of Evil Dead with the skull in the eyes, or you see these like Bad Taste, like where the dude's just flicking off like it
Crazy.
just there's something so special and unique when it came to horror covers. It just felt like you're doing something, even just by looking at them. You were doing something you weren't supposed to do. At least that's
Yeah,
how I felt at my age. So
totally.
it was just always exciting. That was my favorite aisle to go down. I'd pick up a horror movie and a comedy movie every time we rented a film. And we had like a mom and pop place, so it was like it was pretty cool. We went there all the time. So
Well, there's just something about too that I always find like, especially now knowing about these movies, and I was born in like the mid '80s, so growing up at that time, and I knew nothing about marketing. So you'd see these VHS box art, and it would either be a bit of money thrown into marketing for the poster or the front cover, or it would just straight up be like a still from the movie, and on the back they would have like one of the gore scenes or like a
yeah,
boob or something, and you're like, holy Christ, like I never seen this ever. I'm looking at this, you're like, I need to see this. I might never have saw like Motel Hell like 20 years, 30 years after I saw the box art, but something
yeah,
like that where you're like, oh, and Bad Taste, totally. Now I love Bad Taste, and Peter Jackson's great, but I totally remember that. You're looking at it and it's like, holy shit, what is this?
yeah,
What is
yeah.
this
It's
about? And we had a mom and pop place too that had the horror section, which was near sort of the adult, sort of
always,
salooned off section. And so even
yeah.
if I went over that
Salooned off is
area,
good.
you know that, right? And you
Yeah,
just
they always had, and ours had it's funny you say salooned off because they had the double doors to that
Yeah.
section
Oh
in
man,
my
I
in
mean,
my place, and
that's
then
it's like
eventually they got a
dude.
curtain.
Truthfully, like
But
even the horror movie, like that's wild. That, and I'm not surprised because even the horror movies you talked about growing up watching, that's everything we watched. Then when Tremors came out, and I got a copy of it because I also had two VHSs, so we would copy to copy, and my mom would come home every release date with the new movies. And the mom and pop place we had would have like three copies of the new releases. So when Mr. Mom was all rented out, of course, we'd have to rent, you know, some Fortress or Drop Dead
yeah,
Fred or or whatever, and
that's
it's like
awesome.
these are so awesome. These are the
Yeah,
movies that really made me. And there's nothing wrong with new releases, but I just didn't have a mom that like explained to me that it was effects. I had to find
yeah,
that on my own years later. I think that's so incredible that she was like, not only is this not real, but it's manufactured. It's like she's
yeah.
explaining the movie magic to you at 4 years old. Like that is probably the most incredible thing she ever did, and I'm not surprised you do what you do.
Yeah,
Professionally, like
yeah.
that's
I
deep.
wouldn't have. I really got into it because of Jurassic Park, though, honestly. And I know I'm wearing the hat,
Amazing.
so I'm gonna look like I simp for it. But you know, watching like back in the day, one of the things I miss more than anything is featurettes. And I mean, like you watch HBO, you watch like even like Nova and like weird channels like that, National Geographic, any of those. Channels that used to really thrive on education and being an intelligent source, instead of like whatever bullshit they have on there now, used to have behind the scenes that would be like an hour and a half,
Yeah.
and they would have visited the film set. They would be
Yeah, yeah.
interviewing James Cameron or Spielberg or whoever. They would be going into every aspect of the film. I mean, there's one called The Making of Jurassic Park where they really showed everything about that film. And that just knowing, I was a computer geek when I was very young, like very much into computers, like completely understood DOS when I was way too young. It
Cool.
was weird. So knowing that I could do something potentially that involved film and computers was like the coolest thing in the world to me. I drooled over that. I coveted it. And it never seemed reachable, and I think at that time it wasn't,
That
but
that
as
um
time goes
that
on,
that film in particular was like it's probably the best marriage of the two techniques. Especially
definitely one of them.
yeah, like that shot through the windscreen where you've got the animatronic and then it switches to the CG is just so seamless. It's incredible. And in those making
Yeah,
ofs and the featurettes, the when they were originally going to go down that Phil Tippett route of the puppets, and
with
then
the raptors
it
sticking their tongues
it
out.
was like it was an evolutionary change within the space of that production in film generally because he was going to do everything. And then they did
Mhm.
that thing where they left the story is they left the door open, and was it Kathleen Kennedy or someone saw the CG T-Rex on the TV screen and said, "What's that?" And it was a proof of
Yeah,
concept. So
shout out to Steven Spaz Williams, who did that. He wanted to do. He had. He was the lead on Terminator 2, along with his buddy Mark, and they were in a room at ILM called the Pit, and they were like the punks of the fucking of ILM. Like it was like party central. And he truly believed that he could make a living, breathing creature in CG. He had just done The Abyss. That's how what got him into
incredible,
it.
yeah,
And then The
Yeah.
Abyss led to Terminator 2.
Coming with
And
you.
then
Yeah.
so he's sitting there saying like, "Hey, we can make these. I can make a dinosaur essentially." And he created the T-Rex walk cycle, rebelliously. He was not supposed to do that, and he knew Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall and all the important people were visiting, and he threw that up on the screen, knowing that if they just saw it, someone would give them a chance because the heads at ILM weren't listening. They were like, "No, no, we don't want to do this." It was
yeah,
very political. And then of course once it hit, and once this one man became responsible for what we all know as CG and what revolutionized film in general, the higher ups took credit and he just got buried. So it's kind of a bittersweet thing of finding that out later in life, which I did. But it's just everything about that movie to me is it's one of the most important films ever made, because it is the biggest long shot in the dark that anyone has ever done. They created software to do the thing that, like, that's they created the tools that they needed to make
Yeah,
this
that's so
thing. I mean,
crazy.
that's just such a, like, how do you bank on that? How do you even, just the amount of, like, I guess I hope this works. And because you're talking about software and something that's never been done before, as far as like animating a living, breathing creature, how it's going to move, the textures, and etc. But you're talking about something that doesn't even have a reference.
Yeah.
We've never seen dinosaurs before, so
Yeah.
they're making that part up as they're going along too, with the animation and how they sound, what happens to their
Yep.
throat when it roars, and like their behavior, like, is a huge thing. And you get Jurassic Park, like, you hit a grand slam at your first up to bat. That's just, to me, it's absolutely a miracle of filmmaking, because it's just so many chances to
Mhm.
and such a risk, and it paid off because these people were so damn good at what they do.
Yeah, the
It works
technical.
so well
Can I ask
collaboratively.
you
So
about? There's 2 points. The fact,
yeah,
as I grew to love film, and I'm a huge John Carpenter fan, massive. So when I learned
yeah,
that Dean Cundey was the cinematographer of Jurassic Park, it just kind of
dude,
blew my mind.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
didn't isn't that crazy?
But what do you?
Dean Cundey is
Yeah, he's a
he's my
genius.
favorite cinematographer.
I have to ask you this
Yeah.
question though. It's really important. I ask anyone that's seen Jurassic Park the same question. How do you feel about that continuity error with when the wires go and the Mercedes vans, or they go over the edge when there's a big cliff? When they go back past the T-Rexes.
Oh, yeah. So I don't think it's a continuity error as much as it's bad logistical filming and editing. There are maps online that show you how it played out and how it worked. So the T Rex paddock there's no moat in front of the T Rex paddock. He knocked the car down the road and then off the cliff. And
Ah,
there's
okay.
moats on the side of the pens. So what you're seeing when that car falls down, to the left of it, there's jungle and there's this big concrete barrier. That's the T-Rex paddock, and that's where it ends. And they're
Mm.
falling off like 20 feet away from that. But things get so lost in the sauce when when she's knocking the SUV around, the Explorer around, that it's kind of hard to keep track of where everything is. Like, we
Yeah,
never get a really nice, we get one wide of the cars like going in front of the pin, but we never get a really nice wide that kind of shows you where the bathroom is that Gennaro dies in,
yeah,
Yeah,
where,
yeah,
so
yeah.
it confused me when I was a kid. And then I watched it again. I was like, I think this might be just off to the side. And then I saw maps online from people who were just like
Interesting.
tired of hearing it.
that's the next
But
thing.
there,
That's the next thing I'm going to do after we've said our goodbyes and all of that.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, yeah.
It's cool. Yeah, it shows you where everything is and how
That's
everything
incredible.
lands,
Yeah,
and it makes total sense after you see it. Because he tosses that car around, or she tosses that car around quite a
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, yeah.
And it's just, yeah, that scene. So I have a question for you. Do you consider Jurassic Park a horror movie?
I would say. Oh, that's difficult. That's really difficult. I think
Yeah.
I would say
Yeah.
yes. It's like Jaws is clearly a horror film to me, and
Mm.
it's a difficult one, really. In some aspects, yeah, some no. I think if we'd have seen a little bit more gore, possibly, you could clearly define it as horror.
For sure.
Well,
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
really
yeah.
tricky. That's a really good. You really stumped me there.
Because I mean, I feel like everyone saw it, so everyone sees that movie pretty young. I feel because it's
Yeah,
dinosaurs,
Yeah.
right? And I remember seeing it for the first time and thinking like, oh my god, these kids could really die in this scene. They might
yeah,
actually
Yeah.
kill kids
I thought
because
Timmy
they
did die when he was electrocuted.
yeah,
I
I
was like,
thought
I was like,
there's a
fuck, he's dead.
part the sound design is genius because there's a part where the Rex is attacking the Explorer and Lex is screaming and it bites this piece of metal and her screaming stops abruptly and it pulls it up and it almost looks like it's a body in its mouth. It's not. She continues screaming, but they did that pause intentionally. I found out, which was pretty cool. Um,
Crazy. Wow.
but that scene's so dramatic the first time you see it if you see it with fresh eyes. The problem
Yeah.
is no one ever does because we grow up with it, so it's not surprising. It's not,
yeah.
we don't get the pure virgin experience of watching a movie like Jurassic Park or watching Jaws, which is
Well,
why I watch channels on YouTube of people watching things for the first time that have
yeah,
no
yeah,
idea what they're
Oh,
in
man,
for.
it's so last. I'm born in December, and I'm in Toronto, and there's a really cool. Well, there's a couple cool small theaters that show a lot of old prints of movies, and so in December, I had some friends who were staying with me, one of which has never seen Die Hard, which is crazy to me. So we saw Die Hard at Christmas on 35 millimeter in a theater, and
Sick.
truthfully, most of other than I was like, oh shit, I've never seen this in the theater, so that was crazy. But I've seen it 50 times. It was fascinating watching her watch Die Hard. And be like, oh, the
Mhm.
dad from Family Matters. And it's
Yeah,
like, oh yeah,
as a
Reginald
cop.
Johnson, and like,
yeah,
oh, he's in LA. I thought he took place in New York. I thought, I was like, well, it's like, and then holy shit, fucking Snape, like that. It was crazy. You forget. I just you're like, what the fuck?
Oh,
My favorite is when I realized Vigo from Ghostbusters 2's in it as one of the henchmen.
yeah,
Oh, he's one of the
He's
one of
setting
the.
up the rocket launcher thing down. He drops one of the things. He goes
Hmm.
back for it, and yeah, it's like
So that's so interesting, and I think about that a lot. I saw Zombie last night, the Lucio Fulci movie in
oh,
theater, and it was awesome.
so
But
awesome.
there was a lot of people laughing though, and it actually like really fucking pissed me off at a lot of points because I just love that movie, and I saw that when I was, as soon as I saw Dawn of the Dead, I was like, every zombie movie I can get my hands on, and luckily you can rent those. They were pretty easy to get, and there's just, I get it. It's a '79. It's dubbed. It's a, but it's a classic. It's, I don't know,
Yeah,
in my opinion. And there was just a lot of people, and I thought, I wonder if in this very, it was a very gentrified area, and so there's a lot of people there. I wonder if this was people just going out, zombie. It's a Halloween movie. I don't know. Had they been seeing it with fresh eyes? I think about that a lot because a lot of the movies that I love, I've seen, like Tremors, I've seen 100 times, and
yeah,
Beetlejuice I've seen 100 times, and Jurassic Park I've seen probably 50 times. There's and then you talk to people, especially my non-film fans, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" Or "What's this Terrifier thing
oh
I hear
man,
about?" Have you seen that? Or and it's like, "Oh, yeah," like and having fresh eyes. It's a fascinating thing that I think a lot of people don't think about, and I'm glad that you do as well because we got really lucky that we got to grow up with a lot of these movies. But seeing them that many times, you sort of evolve with it.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
because I would say honestly, to me, even when I was younger, it did scare me. I guess because I loved John Williams before I saw that, so I was like, well, I mean, I know he did Jaws, but to me, all his stuff is so uplifting. Like this isn't a horror movie. Maybe like a dramatic thriller. And I love story, and Alan Grant and the kids, and him and
hmm
Ellie, and even uh, like. But I guess Dennis Nedry. That was like sort of a whole horror sequence too. I don't know. That's a really great question. Really, when you debate that, I'm going to actually ask some people that.
yeah.
I
I do. I do. I
Yeah,
think
yeah. And then what do you think?
if you watch that movie clean, it's scary. Everything is
Yeah.
scary. Like, and there's a little gore, but
Yep.
nothing crazy.
Samuel Jackson's arm. Remember that? That
Yeah.
was wild.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
movie actually was, and this is coming off of like I watched Alien, I watched Hellraiser, as like that young,
That's
and,
crazy.
and Jurassic Park was the only movie I almost left in the theater because I couldn't handle it
Totally.
during the T-Rex sequence. Yeah, and it's because when he bit Gennaro, the lawyer, off the toilet and
yeah.
shook
Totally.
him. I'd never seen anything like that because there never had been anything like that. Because if it was
Totally.
animatronic, it would have been slow and janky, and the legs would have been kicking. You never saw motion like a dog, like
Yeah.
shaking and tenderizing somebody, and then
Totally.
having them just their body whip around. So that was the first time anything like that had had to touch my 8-year-old eyes. So I just
Wow.
yeah, so I was like, oh, I think I want to leave, and then we stepped out for a second. I was like, no, I'm good, let's go back in.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
And then
I mean,
think it like literally 14 times in theaters that summer.
wow. Is that the most amount of times you've seen a movie in theater?
In theaters, yeah, for sure.
Like, at release, that's awesome.
Yeah, because I had we went on vacation, and the town we vacationed in had a movie theater that was like less than a mile away, and I saved up money. Oh, my mic's doing something weird. I saved up some money doing magic tricks, which is the dumbest thing. But like instead of a lemonade stand, I bought like a little magic kit, and
That's
I was
great.
actually like tricking people with
That's
like,
awesome.
tricks
That's
and stuff.
great, yeah.
And I made like I would only go out there for like a couple hours, and I would make like $50. Just like people
Crazy.
walking to the beach, like little.
Oh yeah, these adults are like, look at this kid hustling.
Yeah,
God
this
respect.
little Macaulay Culkin looking brat, and so I would I use that to go see. I mean, not that I need that much money because movies were like $6, but I would go see Jurassic. I saw Jurassic Park like 2 days in a row, and eventually it's the same kids that work there, their summer job, and they're like, didn't you just see this like twice? I was like, yeah, I love it. And they're like, just go in, just
Oh
see it.
wow.
So I was like, oh, now I have a free ride,
That's wicked.
Did you
so I went
did
a
you
bunch
ever
of times.
work
My mom still took me.
Did you ever work in a movie theater or anything like that?
No, I mean, I wanted to, but I knew it was just I knew it was gonna be not watching movies all the time. It's gonna be dealing with people and making popcorn, and I think being around it's cool. I wanted to work in a video store so bad, but that's just something that never happened. Yeah, I didn't get that experience, unfortunately.
What's before we kind of go on to the kind of things you've worked on, what's the for me it's probably Rob Bottin's and The Thing. What are some of your favorite special effects or makeup or visual effects or the blend of the two?
I mean, The Thing is just, to me, is amazing. I love the work in American Werewolf in London too. I think that stuff is. I think that's awesome. The Blob,
We were just talking about
80s
that,
Blob,
yeah.
the 88 Blob has
Dude,
some of the
it's so good.
coolest effects ever.
Yeah.
And they're visual effects, but it's a time where they use practical elements to make the visual effects. So I mean, there's effect in there when in the hospital, when the boyfriend or the date, I can't remember his name, is it Phil or Paul, I can't think right now. He gets like, you think he's a main character, and he gets wrapped up, and you see his like skin, like you see this like thin membrane, and he's being like, his skin's like deteriorating, like it's like acidic, and she's like in front of him backing up. Like, that's made with like dolls. It's not even people, and you don't even notice it because you're so like engrossed in it. And even if you watch it back, knowing that, it still looks perfect.
Yeah.
So I think the Blob is criminally underrated. I think
agree.
a lot of people pass it up. Tremors, the graboids look real. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, to those things during the day, it looks like a real creature.
Yeah.
Like, the anatomy of it is perfect.
Totally.
The textures, everything, they just nailed it. Tremors was a movie that we rented back to back
Yeah,
so many
that's
times
me
that
So
too.
many
Me too.
literally
Yeah.
they just gave us the tape. They were like, just take it. We'll buy another one. You guys have paid for this movie tenfold. They literally told us that. They were like, again? And we're like, dude, we
That's so
love it.
funny.
Like we watched
No,
it like every week.
Yeah.
You know?
it's just so good. I mean, I got so lucky. I was exactly the same, except I did have a mom that was a little bit more you can and you can't watch stuff. But it was like the fact that she was a Reba McEntire fan was enough. She was just like, "Oh, she's in this. Oh, I love her. You can watch this." Like, and she would come in and out, but that was enough for her to, and which is fantastic because again, that movie, the I love daytime horror. I love it. And
Yeah.
I mean, other than, and this isn't even a critique. I mean, other than I guess sort of the composite with like, with Bert and Reba McEntire when they're shooting the tremor when it comes in, you know, it's it's pretty incredibly seamless, the effects all the way through that movie, and it's all daytime and it's all like
It's for me.
Even then,
completely still.
One of the things about that film in particular, the effects incredible, but it's the kind of pace it moves at. Like
Mhm.
we were talking about geography before. You feel as though you know the boundaries of the town. When the guys
Perfection,
the
baby.
guys are working on the road, and that's probably one of my favorite moments is when he just uses the jackhammer and it goes through. Obviously, one of the worms.
Yeah.
And then he gets pulled up and you see him disappear, almost like invaders
Mhm.
from Mars on top of the hill. And
Yeah.
it's such a wonderful movie. There's just like one of the big things I was talking with a friend of mine, a production friend of mine, about camaraderie and friendship in movies. And for me, the greatest kind of example of that is Doc Brown and Marty in obviously Back to the Future. But in that, with the two
Bert and
leads,
Val.
it's just like it's the
Yeah.
film for me for Kevin Bacon, and especially his floppy hair. His hair's going on at it
Yeah.
all the time. But it's a wonderful piece of work. And
Yep.
what was the so obviously that's the great example, and the big practicals, like when you realize the size of the worms, when they is it where it's like that, is it the waterway or where the water, the kind of concrete
Yeah.
comes
It's
through, and then you see
Mhm.
the other end of it and how big it is. Just a simple trick like that and a sense of scale. And that's a big thing with effects, the sense of scale and weight, because I'm always talking about weight of effects, the how something looks on screen. And that's incredibly, you've got to, for something to be effective, whether it's, someone's head being cut off or something, it's just got to feel, you almost got to feel it in, not visually, but hear it. And it just like the head drops and you hear it,
Mhm.
What was the transition point for you? Because obviously you were saying when you were a kid, you were doing, putting scars on your arm and scaring people and all of that. What was the kind of, when did it go a little bit more serious before kind of features? Because you were doing shorts a good few years ago. So when did you start to go,
Yeah.
this is something I really want to focus on?
It kind of just happened accidentally. I just, again, like, movies never seemed like something that would be actually obtainable. A kid living in the woods in New Jersey, like how how do you make it, all the way to California? But I wanted to do, I used to film stuff all throughout, middle school, high school. The teachers, if they ever had like a group project and were like, you have to have a visual element to it, like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit, you fucked up because I'm making a movie, and we would do that. There was one that was a lot of fun with all my childhood best friends. Like, this teacher, I swear to God, she had to hate us. Like, I would. And she was like, just to be fair and just to make sure some of you are separated. And she like looked at all of us, of course. It's like 4 of us in one class, our best friends. She was like, we're going to draw the names out of a hat. And everybody got drawn except us. And she was like, no. And she's like pulls them out, and I'll never forget, she pulled them out one by one, and our group was just the natural group.
Hilarious.
And so I pulled her aside and I was like, for the visual, can we do a video? And she was like, huh, I suppose. Like, what do you mean? I was like, can we do a movie? And she's like, yeah, as long as you do everything it's supposed to do it, do it,
Wow.
be in there. So we like mimicked like Lord of the Flies because that was like what we were studying
Yeah.
or
Classic.
reading, and we like I had these two fat Labrador dogs that we were pretending were pigs and stuff. Like so, we were just we were doing like, and it was absolutely crazy. So we, I was constantly making videos and just fun stuff, and without even a way to edit them aside from stacking VCRs on top of each other. Like there
Oh,
was I didn't have After Effects, I didn't have Adobe
no,
Premiere, any of these.
no,
I don't even know if those. I mean, they existed, but not for consumers, I'm sure.
no.
And and then eventually, I wanted to make a movie with my cousins, and we would do that and try to do like zombie effects and stuff like that. And this is before like the big zombie trends um, of like the mid 2000s. And I decided I wanted to try and make a movie. Like my jobs, my career, the things I thought I was going to do weren't really panning out. Nothing was really enticing. Um, I had joined a startup coding a in-car computer system, like basically what we have today in everybody's dashboard for the most part. In like 2003, though, 2004, we were
Wow.
going to do that, and I was helping code it, and it just didn't work out, and I was just bummed. I was like, I'm just gonna make a fucking movie. Well, I can, and I was trying to put things together, and was like, I needed visual effects, and I was like, well, how? The only thing, it came down to I needed a visual effects artist, not special effects, but I needed some digital or CG composition. I was like, I have no idea how much this shit costs. Does anybody even do this like on an indie level?
Hmm.
Like, what is this? And I reached out to somebody that was an indie freelance guy, and the quote
Crazy.
he gave me made me laugh. Like I was like, "What? That's how much?" I was like, I'm good at computers. I bet I can learn this." And I had dabbled with 3D modeling as a kid, which was insane. I got my hands on a program called True Space, which is like the first prosumer or consumer 3D modeling software. So I was like, I bet I could mess around with this. How hard could it be? And then, I just became obsessed trying to do it for this movie I wanted to direct and make with my buddies. And then I did this head that's being smashed by a baseball bat. And I took a melon, filled it with blood, and put a wig on it, and filmed it. And then I traced on my monitor with cellophane. I traced where the head was, or the melon was, and then had my friend lay down and react to it. And then I combined the head being smashed by a baseball, or the melon being smashed by a baseball bat, with the blood in it, with my friend's head, like his face. And I went in frame by frame, and I was just moving things over pixel by pixel, and like just trying to blend it in. And I had always thought CG looked like shit, and I always thought it looked like shit because the lighting was off.
Hmm.
The lighting was incorrect. Or it's either physics, like the animation, or it's the lighting. But
Yeah.
9 times out of 10 at that time, it was the lighting for me, because the blacks would never match like the blacks of the film under it. It would look like it stands out. Like just certain films were like, this is gross. Like, why does this look like this? And so I thought, if I filmed two things under the same lighting, it would probably work. And then I randomly came across a Robert Rodriguez like behind the scenes thing where he said that. Like he was like, yeah, he's like, here's how you do this visual effect, and he showed everyone how he did it, and he was like, yeah, if you hold these two things in the same lighting, it holds up under scrutiny because there's no difference. And I was like,
Right.
yep, that's what I'm doing. So I
Wow.
did this head thing, and then I was filming for horror conventions at the time because I got into actual like using a camera and learning how to do that, and like doing it well enough, and really educate myself through early YouTube. or websites that just taught you how to do it, or books. I was going to Barnes and Noble and picking up like how
Hell
to
yeah.
use a camera, and just completely self-educated in all of that. And I went to a horror convention that Steve Johnson was at, who, as you guys probably know, worked on like Ghostbusters and like Steve Johnson's a legend. And I showed him on a PSP, a PlayStation
Wow.
4, because
PlayStation
this
4.
is how old this was. Like there was
Yeah,
no
yeah.
no iPhone.
Holy hell.
I had it on a little SD card, and I showed him the head smash that I did. And with stolen software and a melon and blood and a friend, totally torrented everything that I learned off of at the
Of
time.
course.
Yeah, come get me, Adobe. No, so statute of limitations way up on that. But I showed Steve Johnson. He was like, how'd you do this? You did this? And I was like, yeah, I did it in my backyard. He's like, how'd you do this? And he's like, Rob, come here. And he like waves. I'm waving, you can't say, but he waves this guy, Rob, and he pulls him over, and he looked at it and he's like, you did that? And I was like, yeah. He's like, how'd you do it? And I was like, awesome. A melon and this and that. And he was like, and you composited that? And I was like, yes. Not like truly knowing what composited meant, like
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah.
And he was like, I'm finishing up a sequel to my first film. Do you want to help me with it? And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I literally just wanted to know if this looked okay to you. And he's like, well, yeah, I'm offering you a job. Of course it looks okay.
Wow.
I was like, I don't know officially what I'm doing. He's like, dude, no one does. I'll help. He's like, just trial by fire. I'll give you a couple shots.
That's fucking
see
incredible.
if you can pull it off. And if you can do those shots, great. If not, then I'm back where I was before I met you.
Sure.
And I was like, all right, cool. And that was Rob Hall, who directed Laid to Rest. The film was Laid to Rest 2.
Laid to Rest 2.
And I worked on some really cool shots for Laid to Rest 2.
Dude.
I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I delivered in the wrong format the first time. He's like, no, do it like this. And then so I redid it. And then but my compositing skills, it was just I not to sound braggy or egotistical at all, but I just had an eye for the composite. Like I could tell, yeah, this looks good or this didn't look good. And I wasn't losing track of that at the time. So I was doing a lot of like intricate effects where it was very difficult, very, very much blunt, just brute force, just to get through this stuff frame by frame, doing it wrong, realizing I did it wrong, going back, throwing it away. And, eventually I did a bunch of shots for Laid to Rest, and Rob was happy with them. And right when Laid to Rest ended, Adam Green posted something about Hatchet. I think it was Hatchet 2 at the time, Hatchet 2 or 3. And it was like VFX artists needed. And I was like, I guess I could just fake it till I make it, And so I was like, I was like, hey, I'm interested in helping. I don't know what I can really do for you guys. And they were like, do you have a reel? And I was like, here's a head smash I did. And I worked on Laid to Rest 2. And they were like, you're hired. And so
that's
I
incredible.
got footage from Hatchet and then Chillerama right after that. And it just, ever since then, it's just been word of mouth and me making, I was making shorts in between that with like my best friends, like my best friend Matt and my friend Larry and a bunch of other people, and just trying out things like just shorts for fun that just made us laugh. But I was also experimenting, and learning what worked and didn't work. And eventually, next thing I know, I'm working on bigger and bigger things. I have a better understanding of everything, and I accidentally became a VFX artist. I went from wanting to make a movie to becoming a VFX artist.
So what was
what
was the time period between showing that effect at that convention to Hatchet 2? What was the kind of time frame?
Oh, to now?
From that first PSP shot till Hatchet 2, between those 2 points. That was
probably 2008. I think it was 2008.
That's amazing.
Or no, from the convention to Hatchet 2?
Yeah.
Oh, that had to be less than a year.
Wow.
It had to be.
That's
it
amazing.
was right after. it was rolling right after Laid to Rest, and Laid to Rest is no joke either. Like that movie at the
Yeah.
time, I think people, unfortunately, Rob has since passed, Rob Hall,
Yep.
and I think unfortunately with that Chrome Skull, his character passed with him because there's no one to promote it like he did.
Right.
And I think people kind of stopped finding it, and
Yeah.
it's if you guys, if anyone likes slashers and hasn't seen Laid to
Yeah.
Rest, I believe it's on Tubi.
I think they're on
Laid
Tubi.
to,
Yeah.
Laid to Rest and Laid to Rest 2, and I feel like he never got his Terrifier 2. And I hate saying that because Rob was like a veteran effects artist that worked on some really big things and revolutionized effects in a lot of ways. And he wasn't afraid to mix visual, like computer digital effects, not CG, but visual effects, like two practical elements on the computer.
Yeah.
And wasn't afraid to talk about it either. I mean, this is someone who did some of the best practical gore I've ever seen in my life in person. Saying like, "Oh, like someone's like, I hate CG." He's like, "Oh, you're one of those guys." Okay.
Yeah.
He's like, "You hate bad CG. You don't hate
Yeah.
good CG
Yeah,
because
yeah.
good
Yeah.
CG you don't even know is there."
Because you don't even know it's
And
there.
I loved that about him because for me, it's about the illusion. It's about the end, what you see on the screen. It's about the magic trick. That's what
Magic
special
trick.
effects is, and visual effects is. And visual effects doesn't mean that you have to make CG people or CG
Mhm.
like cartoon suits or cartoon creatures or any of the things that people think about when they see CG. It just means that you're taking a bunch of elements and doing a magic trick. And I learned that with Star Wars. I mean, they had practical models, like they're not CG back in the 70s.
No.
And they're just like aliens, like we're using
Mhm.
miniatures for forced perspective to make like the weird nesty HR Geiger environment and having the Marines walk in so it looks like this giant thing, and meanwhile it's a miniature like 2 feet from the camera and
Yeah.
they're just positioning everyone properly. Like that's a visual effect. Yes, all the elements are practical, which is why it looks fucking awesome, but it's
Yeah.
a visual effect. And to me, I loved that Rob wasn't afraid to be like, look, I'm a horror guy, but good effects are good effects no matter how they're done. So
What
um
what I like for people watching this, and obviously we'll get to Terrifier at one point or another,
mhm.
is that
Yeah.
you've encapsulated in the last 5 minutes exactly what your creative role is. You're bridging that gap, and I absolutely
Mhm.
love the way you explain that because obviously from a from a filmmaker point of view, and Ian can kind of has a better perspective than myself because he's got he creates visual effects and makeup and everything for his work, and
That's
I
awesome.
love the way I really love the way you explain that because to a
I really
layman
love
who's
how you
a
explain.
I'm a filmmaker but a editor and director and all of that stuff, like more documentary stuff than anything else, is that you clearly explained it so well because
Mhm.
a lot of people would just say, oh, it's a technician that knows how to do something on a computer that creates something that's CG, but
Mhm.
the fact that that experience blending practical elements and making it seamless and making it so you know get you help get that emotion across the line, and
Mhm.
people like, is it Rob Hall and Damien Leone, and that's what they totally understand that obviously as well, and they appreciate that art. And it's a true art form, and there's so many layers to it, and yeah, I just say thank you for explaining that so clearly.
Literally.
It was great. Yeah. So what was that?
VFX joke.
How did you kind of, because obviously with Terrifier now, especially
Mhm.
with 2 and 3, and 3 being absolutely monumental piece of work. How did you kind of, what was your first awareness of Terrifier? Was it the shorts originally, or how did you kind of start to have that relationship
No.
with Damien?
I knew about Terrifier because Steve Barton, when
Mhm.
he was the head of Dread Central, who goes by Uncle Creepy in the
Mhm.
horror community, would not shut up about the first Terrifier film. And it was just constantly in my feed. And I was like, when is this thing coming out? I got to see this. And I saw the clown and I was like, oh, that's cool. it reminded me of something I was, I thought it had. I was like, all right, I feel like I might have seen something like this before, but like I'll give it a shot. And then I had just come off of trying to make my first feature, which kind of fell apart, unfortunately. Um, and I had a concept behind it, and when I saw Terrifier, I was like, "Yep, he just nailed it. He did exactly what I wanted to do." It wasn't a killer clown thing or anything, but just in theme and in tone and
Mhm.
in just the recipe with different ingredients, kind of. And I thought it was awesome. I was like, yeah, this is really cool. And I reached out to Damien and said, dude, congrats. This Terrifier is awesome. When you go to make two, let me know. I'll help you with the effects. I'd love to, I have some techniques that I would love to, help with the kills. He's like, yeah, cool, man. And then I didn't hear from him for a while. And then I reached out again because I saw something about Terrifier. And I was like, I should touch base with that guy. In the meantime, I have a friend who is a DP, and he was working with the Fuzz guys a lot,
Mhm.
the Levies, on other stuff, and he would just call them the Terrifier guys. He was like, "Yeah, I saw Terrifier guys again this weekend." I'm like, "Yeah, I gotta." We have a lot of friends in the same circles, and like it's not every day that someone's making a movie in Jersey or Staten Island or the surrounding area, and Northeast Americans kind of get along very well. We kind of like uh, tend to be drawn to our own elsewhere. So it's just felt like a natural click. And so I reached out to Damien again. I'm like, hey, man, when you make that sequel, I'll even come to set for free. And, like, here are some films I worked on. And I threw him a list of movies. I was like, I'd love to work on some kills with you. Um, and because he did some kills that were similar to the stuff that was in my unreleased film. And I was like, this guy gets it. And he didn't get back to me until after he'd shot pretty much everything, almost everything. And then he was like, yeah, let's have a conversation. And then we talked, and it seemed like it was going to be a good fit. And yeah, and then I ended up getting all the footage for everything, and he had shot mostly everything perfectly for visual effects, without even having me
Cool.
be on set.
That's
So he
very cool.
totally got the concept. And then yeah, Terrifier 2 became Terrifier 2. And seeing art and what he was trying to do, I was like, that it's gonna work. I know that that's a franchise that's going to eventually blow up. So I knew I wanted to get on that train, if for nothing else than to help build my career selfishly, but also because I was like, I like where this is going. I think there's a
Mhm.
lot of potential here for something fun that I want to be involved with. Um, and he was kind enough to involve me. So
That's
that's
very
that's what
cool,
happened.
man. I
Yeah.
like that persistence, and you built that. You like in a very small way. Like when I sent you a message about Joe Alves and all of that. It's a similar kind of little approach, but your work experience, especially early on, and having the balls and the confidence to show your footage to someone that's an icon, that
It's
shows
amazing.
that
Yeah.
shows that persistence, and the fact that he
Hmm.
replied to you and then sent you everything. So when you were working on the effects for the second Terrifier, um,
Mhm.
was it remote, or was it on set, or was it with Damien? So how did
No, it
that
wasn't on
technically
set.
work?
Pretty much everything had already been filmed, with the exception of like a couple shots. And so Damien dropped off a hard drive, and then
Awesome.
I made a list of he gave me a sense of what the effects were. I made a spreadsheet because I'm super organized when it comes. I really am a pre-production whore, and
Mhm.
I'm a big on staying organized because I think the second you like
100%, yeah.
everyone's
That's
not
the hell.
communicating well, they lose
Yeah.
track of things. And of course that's what happened. We lost track of things. But it ended up because it was just chaos. It was like, we need this like ASAP. um and yeah, it just I did everything remotely. I would send it to Damien, he would text me back. I mean, there were times where he would just a common thing with us, probably because we just don't want to take the time and we're old. We would just film with our phones the screen and show like how's this looking, move
Yeah.
this here, and then like it, Damien knows what he wants a lot of the time, but the times he doesn't, it's a nightmare. I'll call him out on that because he's just like, what if we did this? And it's like, okay, I'll try it, and like 5 hours later I'm like this, and he's like, let's try this. And it's like,
Shit.
it can be like a
Yeah,
little much, and he knows that. But and I teased him about that in the past. But we have good communication, but for a lot of the shots and a lot of the effects, I think we were just on the same page from day one. I mean, when Damien walked into my office, he was like, oh, these are like all of my favorite movies, because my office is lined with posters, and I have Temple of Doom and like all these random films, and I think we just kind of come from the same school growing up,
Very
like
cool.
watching stuff like Screen Greats, and watching um you know like just Friday the 13th on repeat, when we're like, he talks about how he was, he would dress like Freddy and Jason when he was like 8, when other kids were dressing like, Ghostbusters or whatever. And I was that same kid. Like there was a year I stayed home. I was like, I'll never forget. I think it was like 10 or 11. I just seen Maniac, you know?
love it.
And I was like, no, I just want to dress like Maniac and
Joe Spinell,
scare
baby.
everyone that comes to my porch. So I literally had the brown leather jacket, and then like a Bowie knife, like a fake one, and like I
Wow.
covered myself in blood, and I had like a scalp that I
Scalps. Yeah,
made.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I was just running up to kids and scaring them on my porch, because I'd rather do that than actually go trick or treating and get candy.
Wild.
And I feel like Damien kind of has that same sensibility and that same kind of past. I think we grew up similarly, and so we get along and we speak each other's language. Like when you can reference movies, when you're like, so
Oh
like,
my god.
are we
Yeah.
talking like this, or are we doing like Conan, and like Conan, but a modern day Conan? Okay, like we can talk through movie speak,
Yeah.
so it's like its
Mhm.
own language. And we did that with like the glowing sword that everyone fucking hates, and and like a lot of other stuff. And his attention to detail is great, and I try to keep my attention to detail great. One of the first shots I ever did in Terrifier 2 that no one has picked out yet as CG, I don't think I've even talked about it. um, some of the newspaper clippings that Jonathan's looking through, when he's looking at the
Oh,
past pictures, are visual effects.
Wow.
And one of the things I did is, when he turns the book, I made sure that the ink itself, just the ink, reflected a little bit, like it had a
wow.
sheen. And Damien was like, "Did you add that sheen, or is that there? Like, how'd like?" He was
That's what sold it.
really
That's what
grateful
sold
that,
it. That's
yeah.
brilliant.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's like the little things like that. Like one of the big
100%.
things that I hate, and I don't want to knock anybody, because there are some people I work with that don't do this. And there are some films, including Terrifier, that there's a couple shots that I didn't work on, that I just like, I look at and I'm like, oh man. Screen replacement, I'm huge on screen replacement,
Mhm.
and I think I really truly believe in making sure it looks like it's lit in that room, filmed
100.
with that
It goes
camera.
back to exactly
And
what you did with that watermelon.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And even a screen has to have that. And even if if I get footage of a TV and it looks pure and it looks almost digital, I'm still gonna walk it back. I'm gonna add some light reflections of the room. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
it's so
add fingerprints. I'm gonna add like
cool.
dust. Like look at your monitor right now and tell me you don't have fingerprints all over it. So I did that. I do that with like every screen I'm given. I throw a lot of elements and imperfections that are
That's great.
it's like those little things that, if they're not there, tell your brain that something's uncanny or something's wrong.
Absolutely.
So I'm really big on reference and stuff. So um Damien appreciates that for sure, and I think that's one of the reasons why he stuck with me for 3. He jokes, we joke that he's like, yeah, I couldn't afford anybody else, but the truth is, he definitely could have, and but I think he,
No, there's
despite it, he could have
yeah.
went to a studio. you know, and for sure. And I thanked him for that. I was like, dude, I knew you could have gone the other route and had a lot more people working on your thing and get it done faster and bigger, not necessarily as white glove and, you know, maybe better, maybe not. But thanks for, you know, letting me build the team. And I built a great team for 3 too. I it wasn't just me, you
So
know, and there was a couple other VFX artists on 2 that I never met, but
how did you build
3
that
I did.
team? How did you start doing that? Was it people you'd worked with
Um,
before, or
no, ironically enough, you know, one of the things of Terrifier that's bittersweet, Terrifier 2, that Damien has joked about with me as well, is that if I do my job right, no one knows I did my job.
Yeah, well,
So
hundred
it's
percent?
it's
Yeah,
exactly.
completely thankless, right? And the narrative of Terrifier 2 is everything's practical. So it's not
Yeah,
like I have anybody out there with a bullhorn telling people that I exist or I did my job, which is something you know, I've debated with the guys before in the past, but I don't care. Whatever, I get it. Horror fans want practical, and if they hear anything else, or if they, you know, it's hard to tell where the line is, you know, once something becomes a visual effect too. So he you know, no, but he even jokes, there was one shot in Terrifier 2 someone posted on YouTube, and they were like, they could have easily just pasted Art the Clown's face on this severed head and did a visual effect with a computer and augmented it, but you can tell this is an animatronic or a practical effect. And Damien sends it to me, and he's like, hashtag thankless job, you know? So like it's like the biggest compliment and slap in the face at the same time, you know? But
that's it. That's
so
incredible.
I
That's yeah,
never thanks. I never had anybody reach out to me. And then out of nowhere, this guy Lincoln Smith reaches out to me, and he's like, dude, I love your visual effects work. And to me, I'm like, okay, does he think it's special effects? Does he actually know what he's talking about?
sure.
Like not in a rude way, but like, is he confusing the two? Does he think I like did Art the Clown sculpt or something, you know?
Sure, yeah.
And he was like, yeah, he's like, dude, your compositing skills are seamless. And I was like, oh, so he knows. Like, and then I started talking to him. I was like, he really knows. Oh my God, this guy's insane. He was like, yeah, if you ever do 3, like, keep in touch. I'd love to help however I can. And I'm like, are you sure about that? Because it's not fun. It's tough. And he's like, yeah, no, definitely, I'm here to help. He's like, and like, cool. Do you have a reel? Which is the most hypocritical fucking thing ever, because I've never made a reel once. I've never had time to make a reel. And he's like, yeah. And he sends it to me, and it's like Key and Peele and like all these like amazing TV shows
huge.
and
Like
movies
yeah,
and stuff. And I was like, oh, so you're just way better than me. Like you're S tier, and I'm like struggling, you
Yeah.
know? And I was like, yeah, I'll keep you posted, man. And I'm like, this guy's insane. And I've recommended him for other projects. And then like months later, this guy Declan reaches out to me, and he's like, dude, I love the VFX in Terrifier too. And I'm like, okay, is this another one of those? Because there's plenty of people that are like, visual effects are awesome, practical, fuck computers. And I'm like, yeah, fuck computers, right? Okay. You know, and Declan was a VFX artist, and he said kind of the same thing. He's like, dude, if you ever do 3, and I'm like, I don't even know if I'm working on 3, because why would they hire me when they can have 10 people or 20 people or whatever? But and I knew that going in, and I wasn't worried about it. I wasn't worried about loyalty or anything. You gotta do what's best for your film, you know.
100%.
And and Declan, I'm like, do you have a reel? And Declan sends it to me, and the first thing I see is fucking Evil Dead Rise, like the peephole sequence in Evil Dead Rise, which was my favorite
Wow.
part. And
Damn.
like, then I'm like, and I had just said to my friends at the time, whoever did the title sequence, like with the wire removal and stuff of the person coming out of the lake,
The water,
I
yeah.
want to meet that person because they're amazing. And it was Declan. So, because that was in his
Reach
reel,
out
and I
to you.
literally just talked about it. And,
Wow.
and so
How
I'm
did
like,
you process that? Because I don't know what kind of
I
personality you
still
are. Like,
haven't.
yeah, is,
I still
that
haven't.
is a
Dude,
a genius scene, and then for that to reach out to you? There's this weird
That's
going
wild.
back to that convention you're at with your PSP, you're
Mhm.
seeing icons you're eventually working with, and then there's this weird twist of people coming to you. It, how did that work with?
This is weird.
How did that work with you in the position you're at? Were you supervising them on the next film, or how did that work?
Yeah, I a little, yeah. So supervising them loosely as possible. I brought them in and I was like, listen, guys, here's the thing about Terrifier. There is no money. Okay. It is going to be long hours. And the
Yeah.
deadline is yesterday. That is going to be
Yeah.
it. 100%.
Yeah,
And I tried to get shots a little bit earlier, and it just wasn't in the cards. I mean, I feel bad for Damien because he was really forced to rush this one out. He really was. When
yeah,
they announced the date,
yeah,
they hadn't even filmed a frame. Like that's
yeah.
Oh wow.
and I love um all the companies that helped make this happen. It just all worked out, but I really just wish they had just taken a second thought. And I'm not shitting on them. I just wish they would have considered a little bit more.
Sure.
Maybe this could have been even better than it was if they had given Damien a little bit of breathing room for his script and for his what he actually wanted to do, and didn't have to cut out um you know cut it down to 2 hours, and etc. um I kind of wish that that happened, but it didn't, and it affects everybody working on the film in every way. So I mean, we didn't get shots until like July.
Holy
You
shit!
Holy.
know and it premiered, and I think like mid to late, I think late July actually is
Wow,
when we got our
wow,
first
wow.
shots. And when I say late July, I'm talking like July in the 20s at some point. And then we had August, and it was due at the end of August because it had to go to color, it had to go to
Yeah.
sound.
Yeah.
So it was a grind. But I had Declan Boyle, who was amazing. I had Lincoln Smith, who's also amazing. I love those two guys. And then um you know it was becoming obvious that this was a way more VFX heavy Terrifier than initially anticipated. We were getting like close to 100 shots per reel, and there's 6 reels.
That's big.
Is what I
That's
was told.
big for a movie
Yeah,
like
it's a lot.
Terrifier scale. That's a lot.
It's a lot because it's
Yeah.
everything, right? And
Yeah.
there's the post production coordinator is an absolute genius. He's one of the sweetest human beings on earth, and he is I say that he is like the central nervous system of post production for Terrifier, and I want people to know he exists. Jason Milstein, he did on set sound, he did visual effects, he did on set visual effects. They didn't bring me on set for Terrifier 3. I wanted to do it for free, but they're so secretive and tight knit, and they didn't know what was going on with the budget, and I don't
Yeah.
think they wanted to ask me to work for free. And
Right.
Jason is astute enough in visual effects to kind of do double work. I wish I had been there because there's some things I would have done differently that probably would have made things a little bit easier for the team.
Easier.
But I mean, it all worked out. But Jason took on a bunch of shots himself, and Jason's doing post production coordination, which means he's coordinating like stuff for like sound design. He's coordinating stuff with the colorist. He's coordinating stuff with Damien and Phil and Cineverse and Bloody Disgusting, and he's delivering like trailers, and he's delivering like copies of the film, and he's doing visual effects, and
Crazy.
he's doing
Coordinating.
guys, insane.
He's
So,
basically the real Madam Web. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean? He
yeah.
sees all the
um,
universes, you know?
he is. So Jason Milstein was doing a lot of stuff like rope removal, and I say rope and not wire removal because they used ropes, and like
Wow.
adding like signs to things, and some more, and we call them invisible effects.
Yeah.
Like painting out lights or painting
Yeah.
out boom mics. Which to me, if he's painting out a boom mic, that's his own damn fault. So he can make up for his own mistake. That's fine. But because he did sound, but he's working on that stuff, and then Declan is like, he kills it, he crushes it, he just works so fast. Like, I swear to God, he says he has kids, and I think he makes them do visual effects on their computers next to them, because I don't know how one person can turn around visual effects like that,
Yeah, and
of
his
that
children.
quality so fast. He
Yeah.
would just like I'd give him like 6 effects, and like within half a day I would get them back with all the notes applied, and then we would be like, do it differently, like not me, but like, there's certain shots where Damien was like, yeah, maybe do this, maybe do that, So we got to try a lot of things on, which is a luxury for any film, let alone a film of our budget. Um, and Lincoln is like, he has this attention to detail that unlike any visual effects artist I've ever met. So I don't know if we can talk spoilers here.
Well,
But
because I know Damien posted about it today that casting crew, please don't talk about spoilers. Let's talk about the spoiler, and what we'll do is, I promise it won't be mentioned until after. So we'll cut it out, but we'll post it
well,
after Halloween, because I think that's what he talked about.
I can be vague as well. I'll be vague with it.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's a shot of, that's it. That's all I'm going to say. There's a close up shot of,
Yes.
that is a visual effect that is frame by frame perfect. It is perfect. And Lincoln did that. And he did stuff like that. So Lincoln's like, Declan's turning out like 10 shots a day. Lincoln is doing like a shot a week or 2 weeks, but his shots are like very meticulous and like close up.
Oh,
And
it's
everyone's
awesome.
working hard. And that's not to say like anybody's like, better or different than anybody else. It's just, it just all fit beautifully. It was a serenade or a synchronicity between everyone. And then when we realized, like, we got, we were getting some reels because Damien was editing this thing, and he's like trying so hard to edit this thing fast enough, and we're like waiting for entire reels for this film that just, I mean, at no fault of his, are not done because the deadline, he just stopped filming the movie, like
Yeah.
he has to wrap his head around the edit. um and so we were getting things kind of late, and it turned into, okay, well, let's bring 2 other people on.
Yeah.
And so Justin Martinez was brought on, and Chris Diaz, and they'd both just come off of VHS Beyond. And Justin actually directed a segment on VHS Beyond. He's a veteran to the visual effects of the VHS series, and had directed segments before, and had directed something in Southbound, I believe, as well.
Mhm.
And
Cool.
Justin was like, "Hey, my buddy Chris knows chainsaw stuff, and maybe I don't think that's a spoiler. I think there's a lot of images of
Yeah.
art with a
No.
chainsaw out there. It's in the trailer. So maybe he can come on. So it just became this like motley crew of VFX artists who are all just great. Like nobody had any like,
Yeah, that's great.
Just
and then
to talk about something specific, the talked about. Let's just call.
Mhm.
What was the effect for the layman, or for someone watching or listening? What was the effect, and why
Okay.
was it so effective?
Okay, I'll talk about that, and I do want to circle back because one more person was added. I do not want to leave
Please
them
do.
out.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
we had a shot of bloody ish with nothing on him, and then we had a shot with a couple wounds, and the
That
idea
meat looks
is
great too.
at the end is on screen in a close up,
Yeah.
which is going to be on a 50-foot screen, as we know it.
Yes.
And to go in and make it had to be flawless. And
It looked
so
great.
Lincoln had
It looked
to
great.
go in and make it look like it's healing, and that the wound is closing in a natural way.
Yeah.
And he absolutely
Crushed
nailed
it.
it.
Smashed
If you
it,
watch
yeah.
that frame by frame on like at the highest resolution, zoomed in, that shot is perfect. It is a perfect VFX shot.
Totally. And I think
100%.
most audiences that are going to see it are also so used to seeing Wolverine healing, Deadpool
Mhm.
healing, right? These big, huge
Mhm.
budget effects, and so you're just like, well, that's just a big part of those characters. And so that, I mean, yeah, that's a great effect to point. It's a great bit to
And
point out because it was so seamlessly done.
And I think what makes it more challenging than a lot of those, like, that you would see in, like,
Hmm.
Wolverine and Deadpool, the depth of the wound, where
Hmm.
you're
Yeah,
seeing fat and
absolutely.
Yeah,
muscle
that meat
tissue,
was
and and watching that stitch up slowly and not
yeah,
just, like, regenerate quickly where it just kinda
hundred
looks like
percent.
it's, like, the skin's pulling over the wound, which is what I see in, like, Logan
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. Of
movies like
course.
that. I've never seen a wound that deep be healed so eloquently, and
Yeah,
so
totally.
perfectly. So kudos to him on that. And then Declan, just I would love to just talk spoilers at some point, and just put a notification there. I mean, if I can talk about some of the shots that Declan did,
Let's tell
um,
you what. Let's put a. Just say spoiler because I'm going to edit this anyway. And
okay,
what we'll do is with the spoiler section, because I know Damien mentioned it today on Instagram about cast and crew not spoiling things. What we'll do is we'll release this clip as a separate clip
yeah,
after Halloween. So that's when if
cool.
it comes from Damien, then it's good enough for us. I think so.
Yeah,
What we'll
Yeah.
yeah,
do
yeah.
so
I mean,
yeah, because okay,
Damien's talked about it a hell
yeah,
of a lot more than
yeah.
me.
So yeah, if you want to
Take
before you're talking about spoilers, do you want to mention that last person you were going to mention? The
Yeah, so the last person I brought in was someone I'd worked with before who was a visual effects supervisor on a lot of films that he brought me on. And the first film I worked with him on was Chillerama, and that's Jason Miller. And I hadn't worked with Jason in a while, but I always, I would check in with him, see how he's doing. And, we needed a team, and Jason had worked on, for Aeroscope and all the Adam Green stuff. Jason had worked on a lot of stuff for like Boulder Light and just tons of commercial work, and like his some Nicolas Cage movies and like really cool stuff. um and I knew there's a lot of stuff that had like no budget or low budget, and you need a certain type of person to work on a movie like this because you're just gonna
Yeah.
get battered. It's like you're gonna get rocked. So it's an endurance thing. Does this person have the stamina and the mental health to get through this? And I reached out to Jason. I was like, do you want to work on Terrifier 3? What are you doing? And he was like, yeah, sure, man. Like, it was kind of a full circle thing because he had brought me on other projects.
Yeah, that's
And so
awesome.
I was like, let me bring him on something, um, that I'm doing. So I'm glad, we got to work together in that capacity as well. And he knocked it out of the park with a lot of effects. Um, yeah, but those guys, the whole team, Justin Martinez, Chris Diaz, Jason Miller, Jason Milstein, Declan Boyle, and Lincoln Smith. I love the work they did. I don't think their names belong buried in the credits. I wish we had a title card, because
yeah,
I think we worked on every single kill. We did a
Wow.
lot of invisible effects, and when I say every single kill, I mean like, there of course there's tons of practical elements. You have Christian Tinsley doing stuff. You have
Yep.
I can't remember what's the dude from the God. He did the Mary statue in the
absolutely.
film,
That was incredible.
which is
That was
awesome.
incredible.
Yeah, and, Jason Baker, who is just becoming a legend in his own right. You had all these like gods of special effects,
Yeah,
doing and Damien as well,
yeah,
doing the practical effects and elements, but there are certain things that just either didn't work or the end result was not up to par,
Mhm.
and or just were built to be a VFX composite, and I can't talk about those specifically yet. I guess we'll talk spoilers later. But there are certain shots that just, I mean, like main things. You're talking. We talk about the first 10 minutes is
Mhm.
lure, right? And we
love it.
talk about the shower scene, and there's a lot of elements in those scenes that are, visual effects. And as much as you try to keep everything practical at this point, it's just kind of impossible, Um, and I just it's a harmonious symbiotic relationship between a ton of people that I've never met in person, between us as a team, the visual effects artists, between the special effects artists who might not even know what we have to end up doing, because they make these special effects and film elements a bunch of different ways, and then we put it all together. And then Damien with his sick mind and the cool stuff he comes up with, and his effects as well. So it's kind of interesting how well it worked out.
Yeah, it
So
worked out pretty well. Because
yeah.
I saw it on a big screen, and basically what I did, and this wasn't piracy or anything like that, but I recorded a voice memo, so I left the audio because I just wanted to do it just for a few minutes. And what I ended up
Mhm.
finding, I did it for the opening scene, which is, I think, one of the best opening scenes for a Christmas movie, period. And it was, what you'd find is my wife being squeamish, but I was laughing because there was just so much kind of humor to it, and it was like not self-referential, but it was just so fun to see and so effective. The fact that you said it was an effect on the Art's face in Terrifier 2, I didn't even think about that. Do you know that's how seamless some of these things
Yeah.
are, which is absolutely, kudos to yourself and the whole team, and having
Thank you.
Damien who knows effects really well, makeup and everything, obviously has that, real eye, like with James Cameron, right, doing matte paintings for Escape from New York. When you've got that
Mhm.
level of understanding, it's so harmonious, and it's like, it's how did you, just before we kind of go to spoilers, how did you get to a point where, when you had this back and forth with Damien about certain elements and how you wanted to do something, how did you find like a middle ground? Was it like, was it Damien saying, I like that, let's go with that? Or how did it work? How did you get to the end point of certain
On
effects?
the good days, yeah. On the good days, it's like, I like that. Let's go with that. Days, yeah. On the good days, it's like, it was more or less just perfect. That's it. And I'm
Wow.
not trying to say my work is perfect by any means, but do your best to make it look perfect and to my satisfaction. And it was like, okay. So every scene had to be perfectly blended in. Um, a lot of VFX companies will tell you, like, it's detrimental to kind of watch things frame by frame as a director. You kind of just want to press play, and if it works, it works. But Damien wanted to watch things frame by frame, so it had to work frame by frame, and it
Mhm.
had to work when you press play. And those
Wow.
two things don't always work the same way. Things can look great frame by frame that look like shit when you press play, and things can look like shit for frame by frame, but when you press play they look great. This had to fit both. So
Wow.
and I'm meticulous about my work. So I'm putting in 20-hour days, sleeping for 4 hours, waking up,
Wow.
doing another 20 hours for a month straight, to make sure he got what he wanted. And sometimes it just doesn't work. The decapitation in part 2, with the store clerk, played by Jonath Davis. What is his, Ricky, I think is the store clerk's name.
Yeah.
When he
Yeah.
gets the bottle in the face,
Yeah.
and he gets his,
Oh,
we
amazing.
wanted the head
Yeah.
getting cut off to be one shot. The problem was, the dummy warped in a way and pulled up in a way where we didn't have that side of the actor's face to put it on the dummy, and the dummy was not going to work. It was not going to stand alone. There's no way in hell.
Yeah.
Um, and so we were trying to figure out how we get this thing to move correctly, and how I could put this actor's face on this dummy, blend it in, animate it in the right way, and track it to make it move the right way. And it wasn't working to our liking. It probably would have been fine for most movies, but we were like, yes, just, we can't get it to work. I showed it to every colleague I know, and was like, how, we need a different approach. I know, and was like, how doesn't work. And other than ILM, and they're like, we could do it, but it would cost like $14,000 just for this one shot, and that's the friend price.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I
Holy.
was like, okay, well, that's, like, bigger than most of the budget of this film. So
Yeah.
no, that's not gonna happen. And eventually, Damien we had to make a compromise, and Damien inserted a cleaver shot, a close up of the cleaver just kind of flashing in Art's face, and that allowed us to cut out the problematic
Right.
frames, really, the seconds that were problematic. But we lost the wide continuous shot because of that. But the kill still looks great. I think it's
Great.
effective. I actually
Totally.
like seeing the weapon and being reminded of it.
Yeah.
And I like seeing Art's face and seeing how he's reacting
Yeah.
during the kill. I know Damien's like, one day I'm gonna get my decap, my on-screen decap, but it just I think I honestly think it was for the better, in my opinion. But just sometimes it didn't work out, but we just did the best, and people still like it. For me, I'm a big context guy, so we talk about that shot in Tremors, right, of Bert and his wife, Reba, in the film, and it to me it never mattered. It never mattered because I was so enthralled with those characters and
Yeah.
that plot. They could have been claymation. I probably wouldn't have
I mean, yeah, and
noticed
that
or
whole
given a shit.
sequence. Yeah,
I,
absolutely.
I,
Because you
I,
wanted to see that. I wanted to see those guns. You show me this wall.
yeah,
They're recycling all these bullets. There's
yeah,
nobody out here. They better fucking use all this, right? Like
yeah.
that was the. Yeah.
If the characters are good enough, if the story is good enough, the movie can look like total shit, and no one is going to care.
Absolutely.
It has
Yeah.
to sound good.
Yeah,
Sound is
isn't
not
that?
something that you can sacrifice by any means.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at Clerks. I do a lot of work with Kevin Smith
Kevin
nowadays.
Smith. Yeah.
And I love the guy. But Clerks, it doesn't look great. But we love it because of the characters. And I have this theory where if you can take characters from one thing and put them in any scenario and it's good and it's something you want to watch, then you're on the right track. Like you can take Quint, Brody, and Hooper and put them in a road trip movie, and it'll be a great movie.
I want to see that
You can
movie.
take the cast of Seinfeld and put them in
Yeah.
a slasher film, and it would be a great slasher
Totally.
film. Characters first, story second, and then audio, then visuals. Honestly,
Yeah.
so I think there are some things janky in Terrifier 2 and even Terrifier 3. Yeah, of course. I think they'll still hold up 20 years from now. People will be like, yeah, this is still cool. The same way we're like Tremors is still perfectly
So yeah,
cool.
absolutely.
Just to kind of give you props and the whole team on, especially the second and third one, is that when you listen to someone like Rick Baker and his how something works and the procedure and the way you said how the muscle shows when the cuts are healing, that's something that he would pride himself on before studio interference on a lot of stuff, especially Wolfman, and that's where you're getting to. Obviously Rick Baker has worked on giant movies, but your films now and your contribution to cinema, you are those movies. You are working those movies that people are going to pick up. Kids in the future are going to pick up and go, "Wow, this is amazing!" Especially with the artwork, it's the way things work and the weight, and like you were talking about the way Gennaro's shaken in Jurassic Park. Those you can see those things, filmmakers. And they are seamless, but filmmakers can see those things in these films now and how effective they work. And with Damien's, the editing techniques of Hitchcock, Damien uses those very effectively, especially in the shower scene. And it's like, wow, that's such a little nod to those things. And you can see his love for cinema. You can see it in the effects. You can see it in the practical effects. So, yeah, hats off to you and the team, because
thank you.
It was so much fun, like, because Ian and I are just huge horror fans, and yeah, it was one of those things where I went in and it was sold out all over the UK. There were only a few screenings here and there, but then more screens popped up, so I had to drive another 50 miles to go and see it, which was incredible. The fact it was sold out in the UK in a little part of northwest England, and to see it with a sold out screen was incredible. And it was just how much like we enjoyed it, and like I want you guys to go and see it, and Damien doing such good press for the film. It matched what I wanted out of it. It was just so much fun to see, especially, and this
Yeah,
is going to be a
fun.
spoiler, a chainsaw up was just just for me one of my favorites. But
totally. Well,
It
it's
worked.
it's
It
so
worked
it's so
nicely.
wonderful to hear from you as well that also everyone that's involved in it is also such fans of the genre, fans of
Mhm.
the detail. It's really inspiring to me because I was that kid as well that was watching Andrew Kramer videos and Video Copilot and trying to learn
I was
how to
going to
like
bring up Video Copilot, and I
dude,
totally.
like that's
I was going to
and
bring up in school.
that's
Lost
and
my
I
train
was
of
like, I
thought.
need to do muzzle flashes. And then he did like that lightning explosion, and I was like, I can do that, And then I sort of did it, and I really love directing, and so to hear you, it's like, well, you did do it, and you literally, took those skills because I, dropped out of film school to go be pro wrestler, and then when I finished doing that, I sort of came back into like acting and stunts, and then that was slow. So then I went into filmmaking, and and so it's so incredible to hear like how you brought everybody on, how everybody worked together. I mean, yeah, this isn't a big budget movie, so you have to love it, and especially with you guys, it's like not only do you have to love it, but you have to be so akin to detail. Like you can't just be like, I love it, so I'll just show up. It's like you have to show up and put 20 hours in. So it's just really
Yeah.
incredible to hear somebody from that, and it's also your love of the genre and the specificness of what you pick up from movies, that it just it's like elevating the experience of these movies even more. And I think Alex is right. In 20 years, like how you talked about, Gennaro, people are going to talk about scenes that you literally crafted, and that's incredible. And with the world we live in now, for the most part, at this point, it's still being seen in a theater. And I think that's
Yeah.
incredible. It's not like,
It's
oh,
insane.
that streaming movie you did, it's like, no, this theatrical experience that I made and worked on. And you talked about the hands and the 50-foot. It's absolutely, I've worked with filmmakers, and you try to explain it, even shooting actors in close up. And I don't want to. And you're like, well, you have to. You can't move. You have to
Yeah.
understand this is going to be, I love your actor prep, but you have to think technical right now because your eyes are all over the place. And yeah, so it's just so much great to know that there's so much love, of course, in these movies, and your team. It's like not only do you work together, you all know the same things. That's why you and Damien get along, of course. You know what I mean? That's and I think in this industry, as it's the relationships and the friendships that go a long way. It's like, okay, you're talented, but are you fun to be on set with for 8 weeks, 12
Yeah,
weeks,
that's
something
huge.
like that. It's I've worked with really talented people whose parents got them fired from a job because they were a nightmare on set. And it's like, you're incredible, but your parent, you couldn't do it. Or you're good, but you're not a name, and you're a piece of shit, and you're late. So we're not
Yeah.
going to hire you again. But he was always on time and really nice, and we'll get him out of the grip department and we'll teach him something else because et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I'm such a big fan. And so to hear you talk, it's so inspiring to me because, oftentimes putting ourselves out there is a tough thing, and you literally did it, and it literally opened up your career. And I think that's something incredible that maybe younger filmmakers should really take note of as well.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, I mean, that's not to say that like people on Terrifier didn't want to kill each other, but like,
Oh, no, no, no.
brothers and sisters want to be there too,
Of course.
So it's, it's and weird, VFX is kind of siloed. We're like an afterthought, and
Mhm.
especially on something like Terrifier, where like even like there's that joke, the redheaded stepchild, like the hidden secret of Terrifier,
Yeah,
because all anybody talks about are practical effects.
of course. Right.
So it's nice to have some people recognize that there are visual effects and recognize
Yeah.
that it's a team, and it's a team. Every single person on that set made it work. Olga Turco's costume design and production design,
Yeah.
Justin Baugh was production consultant. She did a lot. Britt Dovish is, I mean, like her artwork's amazing. You have like all these people in all these different departments doing different things and pulling not just their weight, but just extra weight to get these things done and make these things work. The entire art department for that movie, really busted their ass. The
Yeah.
entire camera department really busted their ass. Um, people that just really see that Damien and Phil Falcone are willing to bust their ass, and that everyone else is busting their ass. We all just kind of, you want to work with somebody that will do that, that will be in
Yeah.
the trenches with you. So, I think that's why people are willing to endure, and that's the secret ingredient for Terrifier. It's not, uh, I mean, David's amazing, but it's not just a killer clown. It's not just cool kills. It's everything is on that screen as
100%. Yeah.
from people who care. So it's thank you for saying that. It's cool, and it's kind of surreal. It doesn't feel like it's a real thing that he is in theaters, or that this movie is something that
It's being
so many
seen worldwide as well.
yeah.
And it's still to open
kinda
in
nuts.
certain countries as well.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane.
There's two.
Um,
Do you mind if we've got time? There's two
Yeah, I got time.
specific scenes that I want to kind of talk about. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if it's this might be a spoiler, but
Mhm.
was it with a piece of glass or the scissors? What kind of?
The glass.
Because the best thing I thought, all right, I have to turn whilst in the middle of that scene. I turned to my wife, and she was her face like obviously just like a snail went back into the shell, and it was just absolutely priceless. So, is there any kind of effect or visual effect in that sequence at all?
In the sequence, I mean, the stuff, I'm trying to think of everything that's going on, because Art is doing something
Oh yeah,
differently.
that's
He's
amazing.
doing
Yeah.
something, so yeah, I mean, the attic stuff, Art being a visual effect, because no one could be that still ever.
Oh
There's
wow. Okay.
some was a visual effect.
Yeah.
Obviously, the two handymen that come up, I painted out bubbles that just happened to be in the blood for like 5 hours one day for
Oh
each
my
blood pool.
god!
Yeah.
Wow.
There's and then of course, I mean, Declan Boyle did a tremendous job on the razor to the scalp.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
incredible.
no.
It's incredible.
Awesome.
Yeah.
He really made that sell. It was a cool effect, but it wasn't selling. And Declan, the things he added to make that work, and the way he
Yeah.
like made it split further and added like a rim
The
to
sound on
the
that was
skin, and
amazing.
Wow.
yeah, yeah. And then I added the face for the face rip, and then Declan added like a tongue. It was just his tongue. His tongue has a cameo. He just filmed it and added it. And
That's great.
there's a lot of cool stuff for that snare. The hands, the being bitten off,
Yeah.
all the attic stuff, but her specifically using the knife, I think it's kind of, I mean, it's not on screne, so it's really like an implication.
It's
Um,
genius, and I love the
Yeah.
I love the fact that because we were talking just before we talking about other stuff, and we were talking about Street Trash and a lot of other movies we've watched recently,
Nice.
and I love the idea that art, it's obviously the law of art, or the law of these films, is that he's hibernating. I love the idea he's hibernating. That was one of my favorite things.
Yeah, it's pretty
And
cool. I like the lure. I'm interested in seeing where it goes.
and
Mhm.
the one effect I loved, and it's very, very specific, is, and I'd love for you to talk about it if you can, is the movement of the Virgin Mary, because she moves like a statue. And it's like, it's not
So,
just human, it's something otherworldly. And for me, that looks like a scene in hell. And there's obviously poster art and references to hell and the seven levels. You can see that on the wall. And obviously the whole stuff with religion in the film, the tapestry that's woven, is fantastic for me. It was the most appealing thing in the film for me. So how did that kind of, whose decision was it? Was it Damien's to move the Virgin Mary like it was?
I mean, I think it's probably what Damien wanted. I don't think he did any tricks with the edit for that. There's no visual effects on that. That is the actress
Wow.
moving that way with
Oh,
the suit that Campiglione, is it Campig? I can never pronounce it. Made for that actress.
That's incredible.
The things that were done visual effects for that shot are the demon. Originally, Damien wanted some kind of eye, but we couldn't dial in really what the look should be. I kept saying like, dude, just keep them black. It'll look scarier, you know. And eventually, we had another team black them out just because it was. I had done a pass at it, but like it's a lot of frame by frame work, and it would have been eaten a lot of time. So we outsourced that. And then there's Mary's hand moves like a human's hand because she's holding this chain, and the actor is like moving and like, you know, like growling and stuff. And uh it wasn't revealed that the statue was not a statue yet or not going to move, so they had to
interesting.
isolate it and move it. And that was a really, I know that was a tricky thing to do, that team did. So that was like almost a separate segment, and for a bunch of reasons, because there's different visual effects artists working on it. Jason Baker was making that awesome iron mask and like the whole like demon looking dude. And
That
then
looked that
you
looked
know,
like
the Mary
something
was a different
from
thing, the set.
yeah, it looked like something from Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings. It had that, you know, massive kind of quality
Yeah.
to it. And that
Yeah,
scene was,
it's cool.
what the hell is that? That's amazing. That whole
Yeah,
small scene, I think it's
dope.
a single shot, isn't it? And it's just
Yeah,
absolutely incredible.
yeah, I think it punches in. I think it's a couple shots. There's a close up, there's a medium, and I think a wide. But yeah, I loved it. As soon as I saw that, I thought it was the coolest damn
Yeah.
thing. I was like, yeah, this rocks. I like where this is going. I want more of that. You know, hopefully in 4 we'll see more
Yeah.
like that.
So
Be dope.
do you know anything about 4, or are you
No, I
confident
barely knew
you'll?
anything about 3. You know, like they're
Because of
so
course people, I mean, we
secretive.
want to know. I think they've announced that there will be a 4.
Mhm. Yeah,
Obviously,
definitely.
it's did
There
well enough
has to
that it
be.
absolutely should. I mean,
Has
there
to be,
literally has to be.
There has to be.
Um,
Yeah, I would think there's hopefully a 4, maybe a 5, because Damien likes to make things long, you know.
yep.
And it might be an
yeah.
endurance test. Maybe they'll Harry Potter it, and it'll be like Terrifier 4 Part 1 and
Yeah.
Part 2.
Wow.
But I'm just saying that there's
No,
No,
of
no,
course.
yeah,
no
yeah, yeah.
validity to any of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he's just looking to. I mean, I can't think of a time when there's been a nice like wrap up like for a horror franchise.
Yeah.
Even the best of the best, like Alien, went off the rails, you
Oh,
know.
Awesome.
Tremors, forget about it.
my wife and I, we
um
rewatched because we went to see Alien Romulus, and we watched, you
mhm.
know, all of them, and obviously in sequence, and, you know, with Prometheus and all of that. And then when when she watched, and she'd seen all of them before, but when she'd seen Alien Resurrection, it was the longer version, and the longer version has this really, the visual effect at the very beginning is horrific now. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just some things don't age well, and, you know, they should end it a lot sooner.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty half baked. So I think Damien's just trying to do something like what Breaking Bad did, you know, where they offered Vince Gilligan however many tens of millions of dollars to keep it going, and he's like, nope, it has to end
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It has to wrap up nicely. It is due. We get in and get out and make it epic forever, you know, instead of
Yeah.
keep shitting on it over
So
time. And
totally.
he has an opportunity to do something. I can't, I'm pressed to think of a franchise that has
No,
done
there
that
isn't.
for some of the best movies that have ever existed.
Yep.
So you know, it's just end it at the right time
Yeah,
and close it out. Now, here's to say he might not do that. You know, who knows? You know, he might
Who
pass
knows?
the
Yeah.
torch. He might decide he does want to do art in space. Who knows what tomorrow brings?
Yeah.
But I think right now, at least for the next one, the next installment, he's trying to put a really nice bow on it and have an epic franchise that's of a quality that where it just for some people gets better every film, you
Yeah.
know, literally every film.
yeah.
You know, for some people, like, just stays close to better, you know. He has an opportunity to do that. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool
Very
that he
cool.
can.
This is something that Ian and I talked about and debated whether I was going to ask you this or not. And just tell me if you can't, you know, we'll cut it out, whatever.
I'm very transparent, so I'll tell you anything.
So I was wondering about two particular, and if there's scenes cut out, because it feels like it's cut out. Would that be right?
So I gave Damien a lot of notes, you know, on the end, because he was kind of going insane because he had no time to edit this fucking It's an epic film.
Yeah,
It really to have that quick a turnaround on it, you know, with all
that's
the
crazy.
they got. It's absolutely. I don't think. I mean, Damien gets a lot of love for being a special effects artist. He gets a lot of love for being a director. He is an amazing editor. He is an amazing editor. He makes choices that I never would make that just totally work, like jump cuts of art dancing where it's just 3 shots in a row of the same angle and everything, but it works. Guy has excellent rhythm. He has excellent decision making skills, but he needed another set of eyes, and I helped him. You know, like, hey, he had to cut like 8 minutes out, and I was like, cut here.
Wow.
And one of the things I noticed, there's 2 things I noticed. I was like, dude, I feel like we should see her get this. But it's okay that she doesn't. It's okay.
Right.
We see the dirt and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Which I didn't see the first time I watched it. I probably, like, I don't know, like, got off the pee or something. And I'm like, he's like, did the dirty hands sell it? And I was like, what are you talking about? What dirty hands? What? And I was like, let me go back and watch it again. And I watched it again. I was like, oh yeah, I totally missed that by accident. Like, I must have, like, gotten up for a second. But one of the biggest notes I had was like, dude, I really feel like, as the character that he is, deserves an on-screen death of some sort. And the fact that he doesn't have one is, I think people are going to be upset with that because he is deserving of one. He's
totally, yeah.
And, you know, if we're going to motivate, I also understand he's trying to do the 7 thing, right? Like, you're what's in the box, you know?
A few moments later.
Territory and T2.
Yeah, 100%.
Now we're at, you know, and he did a great job of shaping Sienna, and Lauren Lavera did a great job of shaping her up
incredible.
to be this and chipping away at the character to be this. But now we have it. Now we have Sarah Connor. Now we have Ripley when she tapes 2 guns together and is like, I'm going after this queen fucking alien into this nest with this nuclear bomb looming, or this nuclear plant, like, about to explode. I'm trying to remember what it was actually called, because it's not a nuclear plant. I feel like such a big fan right now.
Atmosphere.
The processing. Yeah. Now we have this you know, thing that's going to destroy like everything. And I'm going in anyway. So it is such a driving force that this movie could potentially, if he wants it to be relentless, he can have it be relentless, and any decision that Sienna makes that goes towards killing Art the Clown or destroying some kind of evil is going to be justified. I mean, that's a great position to be in when you have a blank page in front of you.
This is the what you're saying in terms of, you know, showing a scene with what I see for you. If you work on Terrifier 4, I see a lot of fire effects in your future. That's what I see, especially for hell. If I go for a classic look of hell. But, you know,
if I do,
if the
I like fire effects, so my dad was a fireman, so I take it very seriously. That's why I like to think that the CG fire in Terrifier 2 doesn't look like shit. You know, they use practical fire, but there was a lot of CG fire as well.
So it's
so
you could.
A few moments later,
because this is such an incredible opportunity to talk to you.
Sure.
And you don't have to get too deep into it because people listening probably have no idea. But what are you working on primarily? Where are you getting assets? Like, are you creating them yourself? Are you getting them from sites? Are you After Effects? Are you Blender, Cinema 4D? What's sort of the technical stuff you guys work on day
Oh,
to
the
day?
technical stuff. So, I have a very hateful relationship with After Effects.
Yeah,
I'm tied to it because I come from the school of Andrew Kramer.
yeah,
I did learn Nuke for a
yeah,
little bit, but I don't know it well enough to really justify using it all the time because I can
yeah,
do the things in the After Effects so much faster
yeah,
because I'm very prolific in that. I use Blender a lot
yeah,
for certain things. I love it. It's a great tool. I do use Cinema 4D here and there, but I mostly stick to Blender. For some
yeah.
reason, Blender's easier for me. Some people say
Same.
Cinema 4D is easier. I just I don't know. It's pick your flavor, you know. Um, I use EmberGen for Fire now.
Yeah, cool.
EmberGen
Okay.
is a it's like live rendering. I use that for the wings when the wings catch on fire in Terrifier
Ooh,
2, and
yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool.
in beta mode. You can really dial in realistic fire in that. Um, and I make my blood in Blender, but I use what they call HDRIs, which is like a capture of the environment, so all the lighting matches. Because again,
Oh,
lighting's everything.
wow. Yeah.
Um, and pray that the colorist like sticks to the look. Uh, um, but yeah, I mean, if a new tool comes out, I'm trying it out. I use Lockdown a lot. All of
If
us
you
do.
you like, yeah, I was gonna say, what's your tracking?
So
Like, what do you guys?
so I use Mocha Pro,
Yeah,
but I also and some things I do in Blender. But Lockdown for surface tracking.
really?
Lincoln Smith opened up my eyes to that because I used to use the mesh tracking in Mocha Pro,
Yeah, me
and
too.
it's
Yeah.
solid. But Lockdown, once I learned like its secrets, I should say, I was like, okay, this is I think
Okay.
Lockdown was used for the hand shots. Are
Okay.
we talking spoilers yet or not?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go for
um,
it. Yeah.
so the axe shots in the beginning, I use Lockdown on all of those, and that's the
Wow. Yeah.
his face wasn't there and his arm moved like a dummy because it was a dummy. So I added his face. I re added an arm and the body. His whole thing is like reconstructed from just elements, and for both shots that where the axe goes in and the axe goes to his face, um, and I used that on.
Mhm.
That was all visual effects.
Wow.
I made the axe bigger. There's a lot of stuff in the first 10 minutes. I mean, there was a shot where Steve Delasala, who's a Fuzz on the Lens guy, awesome dude, great DP, just all around producer, just jack of all trades, right? Genius. He was dressed as Art in the Santa costume without the makeup, and and he's one of the shots he's ready to take a swing at her arm, and you see his whole face, so I had to take Art's face from another
Oh, wow.
scene and move that to Steve Delasala's face, and like it was in Art
Seamless.
has the beard and Art has that shot is not seamless,
Yeah.
but you don't notice it's there
No,
because
that's what I'm
it's
saying.
background
For
noise.
us,
Yeah.
it's and I know to a much lesser degree than what you're doing at the absolute, incredible, intricate things that you're literally doing with this. So it's wow,
um,
yeah, that's crazy.
So Lockdown's impressive. I
Yeah,
used it a lot in the shower scene as well. So
Wow.
yeah,
cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I heard about it. The advertisements are coming. I've watched a few like intro videos, and it's not something that I've jumped on yet, just because I was like, God, I don't know if I.
absolutely worth it.
But
Especially Lockdown 3.
yeah,
Lincoln really sold me on it. And it was a game changer for this.
cool.
And the guy who made Lockdown is the guy who gives you IT support, and he's super
Oh, really?
responsive.
Oh,
Yeah, he's
cool.
super responsive.
Wow.
Like, how
Like,
incredible is that?
yeah, yeah. He'll be like, send me. He'll be like, can you screen share with me what you're working on? And like, he'll tell
Wow,
you like help you with a lot of
That's
stuff.
incredible.
So
amazing.
That's incredible.
it's yeah. I recommend Lockdown 3 quite a
Cool.
bit. Um, and yeah, buy it please don't
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like
no,
an
no, no.
indie thing, like
Yeah,
guys
no,
making it
that's
by
what I
themselves.
loved about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, whatever tools available, I try to bang out and use, as many plugins as I can. Um, yeah, I'm trying to tone down on the plugins a little bit so that if I have to pass the torch, I can, or if I
Right.
have to switch to a different machine and it's like one user only, which happens a lot,
Yeah.
I don't have an issue. But it's yeah, it's just mostly, I mean, for this, our primary thing was After Effects, which is crazy, but that's like the universal language for visual effects, because most of us started with Andrew Kramer.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Um,
Cool. Awesome.
before we wrap up, and thank you so much for spending
Yeah,
a couple
thank
of
you.
hours
of
with
course,
us.
yeah.
I'd love to talk to you just about Jaws on our next recording. So I'd love to do that with you. But what's your favorite? What's your favorite scene or moment in Jaws? Because I know you and I like are the same when it comes to this movie. So
Yes.
you know what I
Yeah, I
mean.
have Quint tattooed on me.
I know.
Oh,
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
a whole Jaws
Yeah.
sleeve going. It is, yeah, I love it. I wouldn't be in film without that.
wow.
What's your favorite moment or scene or little
It
thing?
changes, everything. Every time I watch it, it
perfect.
changes. Growing up, like, I loved Brody as the main character. I was like, Brody's the man. And then Quint's so cool, so I switched to like, yeah, Quint's and then like I'm like, no, Hooper's the real badass of this movie. Like, he is not afraid to do anything. He basically tells everyone to go fuck themselves. He's not scared, like, and he's brilliant. And he's like, yeah, I'll just go in the cage with the shark. Fuck it, it needs to be done. Hooper's awesome, and he's, it's Richard Dreyfuss. So
Yeah.
I really, I mean, there are just moments in Jaws. I mean, of course, like, the chair is like the Hitchcock shot in the chair when Brody just realizes everything, all
Yeah,
his
that's awesome.
nightmares that he's been worrying about has come true. The Indianapolis speech. I mean, you can't go like,
Yeah.
Jesus, just throw it, throw a proverbial dart at Jaws and hit a
Yeah.
magical scene. Everything is so, like, carefully planned in the moment because they were really riding by. They weren't really. It was wild. Like, they didn't have time to prep, or they didn't know what they were doing that day half the time, so they make shit up.
Wow.
So Jaws, another miracle movie. Go Spielberg.
Yeah.
I will say, like, a couple of my favorite lines from Jaws are not like, "You're gonna need a bigger boat" or anything. I love, so I'll throw that out there because picking a scene is just impossible. It's just absolutely impossible. I love when when Quint tells. I mean, this scene kind of like changed the way I look at things a little bit. When Quint's like, it does tell me one thing. It tells me that you college boys don't have the education to admit when you're wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that line.
Yeah.
So many people are just stuck and stubborn in their, in their ways, and they're afraid to change their mind, or they're afraid to look stupid. And that, at a very young age, I was like, oh, yeah, I should be able to change my mind. I should be allowed to feel stupid, like, not feel stupid, but be allowed to be wrong.
Yeah.
So that kind of changed the way I looked at things. As stupid as it is coming from Jaws in that scene, it had an effect on me.
A few moments later.
Oh, okay. All right.
But
Cool.
yeah, it's so difficult because Ian and I are like, we're like brothers now, because in 2020, when everything went to shit, I started a film festival called the Isolation Film Festival, and then I did it. And we had judges. We had the guy that shot Sweet Child of Mine music video as a judge, and then the next year we began to be friends, and we shared the love of horror. And then the year after, October 2020, I started a film festival called the Hellbound Horror Festival, and I had Alex Proyas and Joe Alves as judges for the festival. And it was just persistence, and like, when I realized, I learned a lot about myself during COVID, where if I push and want something, I'll get it, through hard work and all of that. So when I ended up on the phone with Joe Alves outside my house, and I was talking to the guy that created the shark for Jaws, it was like, you know, a mind trip. And then we did a podcast recording very similar to this. And I had so many notes about billions of questions, as you can imagine. I asked him about the chandeliers on the front of the cars in Escape from New York, and why is the chandeliers? And it was incredible. And there's so much to that movie in terms of production. Like, you know, that line I quoted to you the other day, the fact that you knew it off by heart was just like, you know, yeah, this is a guy that really knows Jaws, you know. And
Yeah.
But my little question is, just to kind of go back to this, there's obviously, you know, it's the VHS that I actually burnt through. It didn't work anymore. But then I think it was in 95 when it was the 30th anniversary, they did a release and they changed some of the sound and lighting.
The whale.
Yeah, it was like glass smashing when the shark exploded, and when the wood of the boat's getting knocked through, and then the lighting of Chrissy Watkins at the beginning, it was much brighter. I didn't mind that too much, but it was the other sound changes. It was a little bit jarring for me. You know, like how they took the green away in The Matrix, and just to make it look like the others.
It really upset me when they took, because the whale was the biggest sound effect, because they made it just sound like a normal orca, or a normal whale, with like a high pitch, like, you know, and in the movie it's like this very, it almost sounds like a droning like sound design. Like, it doesn't even sound like a whale. It's just this like, you know, like this ominous, frightening thing. It used to scare me when I was younger, and then I hear it and I'm like, why did they do that? So like, why? But you know, Universal has a tendency to do that, and Spielberg has a tendency to make them put things back.
Well, he admitted that mistake with ET, didn't he, with the shotguns, you know?
Well, he wasn't very happy with them changing anything on ET. It comes to like some people think it was his decision. It really wasn't. And he had forced them, when it came out on DVD, to include the previous edition because of that. He was not okay with them changing that. He was very upset about it. Spielberg's very vocal about things. Sometimes he just has to play along, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
But I mean, he did a shot on Warhorse that I think is like perfect, and he talks about how people argued with him on that shot, and I'm like, what? Like, just let the man be Spielberg. There's a shot in Warhorse where like there's a line, there's a tree line, and in the tree line there's people with like Gatling guns, the rotating guns, and there's guys on horses running towards them with like swords and like little guns, and they just, you know, it's just the difference in warfare, like the change in warfare. And he has an overhead shot, and the horses are running past the Gatling guns covered in blood into the woods. So awesome. And people were like, well, the horses would get shot too. Like, people on set were telling him he couldn't do it because the horses would get shot. And it's like, dude, but it's the visuals. That's the beauty of filmmaking. It's
filmmaking,
like, that's symbolism. Like, you're not gonna say, hey, wait a second, you know, you're gonna take in what it means, you know, and just it's crazy that people question him, but he I think that Jaws, this is all to say that Jaws thing was definitely a mistake. Just keep things the way they are. Like, why change it? Like, Jesus, like, do we really need the special edition of Star Wars for every fucking movie that comes out?
No, if that happened further with Jaws down the line, I think like the restoration of it, you know, because one of the judges that worked on the Isolation Film Festival, he worked on the restoration of Jaws, you know, getting, you know,
beautiful restoration.
Yeah, it's one of the best releases ever. And, you know, Ian and I were talking about this the other day, that I don't have a 4K Blu-ray player because I'm a big collector. My house is like Blockbuster. You know what I mean? It's like that. I've got stacks of like special editions under my desk here when I'm editing. And Jaws is one of the 4K Blu-rays I bought without even having a 4K player. You know, I just, that's for a keepsake to watch at some point.
Awesome.
When my PS4 dies, then I'll sort that out.
There you go.
but it's not dying. I'm trying everything to kill it. So
Well, doesn't PS4 have a drive for 4K Blu-rays?
no. Is it? No,
Right.
it's not the new station. It's the last black one. So it's just
Oh,
it's
okay,
just
okay.
it's just Blu-ray. Yeah.
PS4.
So I'm just waiting for that to
Gotcha,
die, and
gotcha.
then I'm going to buy the upgrade.
There you go.
But Joshua, thank you so much, my friend. It's been an
Yeah.
absolute
Yeah, of
pleasure.
course.
And
Yeah, I like talking to you guys. I'm sad sending.
we'd love honestly, we'd love to keep in touch and hang out
sure.
and talk about Jaws or something, and maybe like watch
Yeah.
something together. Like we watched Street Trash the other day, literally like this, and we had the film streaming online.
That's cool.
And
Yeah, I just I have a Street Trash sign that I
oh,
bought.
awesome.
I just worked on the sequel that Ryan Kruger made. I meant to hang it behind me
That's
and light
very
it up.
cool.
And I have coasters and stuff. But yeah, I just worked on. I did a few shots as kind of like a fun thing for Ryan Kruger.
Oh, amazing!
Who directed the new Street Trash.
That's very cool,
Yeah.
man.
Supposed to be
Is it really
amazing.
quick, just because I'm such a huge nerd, and I was just doing a little due diligence because I saw that he commented on your Instagram, and
Yeah,
then
sure.
is that how that happened? Like you posted the Street Trash thing, and then he commented, and you were like, "Dude, thanks so much. If you need VFX on the film, let me know." Like, is that where that communication
Exactly how
started?
it happened.
Like, that's so
It's
fucking
so
awesome.
funny.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he saw
Dude,
the
that's
head
so
explosion
incredible.
I did for this film Wrath of Becky, which
Wrath
I
of
love
Becky.
the Becky series. I
Yep.
love Becky.
Yep.
I love Wrath of Becky. My friends at Boulder Light produced those movies, and Wrath of Becky. I did some gore effects, and one of them was a head explosion.
With the grenade, right?
100% CG, and I had no time. I had no elements. It's literally 100% CG, and he saw it and was like, "Dude, this is awesome." And I was like, "Thanks so much." And I saw he was making Street Trash, and I was like, "What? Street Trash 2024? What? Wait, no." I was like, "Dude, you please, because the original Street Trash is so much fun, but it's one of those movies where it's like, I don't care if you remake it because you like." Someone probably should give it another shot.
Yeah.
It's kind of almost there. So yeah, that was one of the last things I worked on.
Oh, that's awesome.
And 4:30 movie, Kevin Smith's
very cool,
associate producer on that. It's been a lot. It's been a wild year, man. I mean, like there is a time, like right now, I technically have 3 movies in theaters currently between Terrifier 3, 4:30 movie, which is still in some theaters, and Street Trash.
It's going to get a Christmas re-release. It has to. Damien's talked about it as well.
Yeah, I think that's why. Yeah, I've been suspecting that since day one. That why they would release in October is because you can get the re-release in December.
You can get re-release.
So yeah, it's been a crazy year. Stream too. I worked on Stream. I did a couple shots for that. Lincoln Smith did a lot of visual effects work on Stream, and his visual effects work on Stream is incredible. And he doesn't get enough credit because everyone thinks those shots are practical too. And there are some things, there are some things that are 100% visual effect that don't have any practical elements to it that Lincoln did that he doesn't get credit for, unfortunately, that are just amazing. And I kind of wish they would be a little bit more vocal about some of these things. But again, we get it, dude. Like horror. Yeah, as soon as you start saying visual effects, there's a misunderstanding, and there's a huge difference between visual effects and CG. Like visual effects are the all-encompassing umbrella, and practical effects fit under it. CG fits under it, and models everything, all the different disciplines, and but people think same thing's happening with AI. People are like, "Oh, that's AI," when they mean CG. Like it's a weird, like people just don't understand.
It's a misunderstanding, and that'll be cleared up. But it'll take a little bit of time, but that'll be cleared up.
Yeah. So hopefully people start understanding that there are, while all the elements except for one in Terrifier are practical. All of they are mostly, there's a lot of visual effects, and Damien will say like 95% are practical effects, but it's like kind of saying like, I don't know, the practical effects are part of the visual effects, so it's kind of hard to really mutually understand where that line is, because I want to be like, well, no, a visual effects shot, the second you put a composite on it, it's visual effects, baby, that's under our moniker, but Damien's like, no, it's 95% practical. but we used all practical elements, but combine the two. So it's really kind of, it's like an echo chamber. Like, we don't really know how to describe it other than practical effects. So thank you guys for having me on and being able to highlight some of the visual
Totally,
effects
no.
that are in the Terrifier films,
Absolutely.
and just in films in general. There's a lot of great visual
Yeah,
effects
that we don't see.
in newer horror that just you would never
Yeah.
notice. The bad stuff is what you notice.
Well, and you did such a great job, and so thank you as well of really breaking it down, for most people don't know unless they're in it. The word CGI or effects immediately is just, animation, the blood splats in John Wick, the CGI, and you're like, that's not the case. And that's literally your job, so having to quantify that to people about, it's a hard thing to say. So you really did a great job of breaking it down. So I'm really happy to be able to highlight that, because it is an absolute unsung hero of filmmaking.
Yeah. And I know we have to wrap things up, but it's kind of sad because nowadays you have people saying like, oh yeah, Alien Romulus, all practical, all practical. It's like, okay, so you had the most advanced robotic animatronic face huggers all jumping at once through a door. Like, they did that on set, I'm sure. When in fact, like, you look at, like, if you talk to the visual effects artists that worked on it, they're like, no, like, they were great for references. Like, it's, of course, if you have an alien suit or an alien animatronic under that lighting, then we know exactly how this thing's supposed to look.
It's a sales tool now, isn't it? Look. It's a sales tool. It's a sales, like,
I mean, Top
buzzword
Gun,
to say,
they were like, those jets are real. It's like, oh yeah, the enemy jets that don't exist in real life were just built for this fucking movie. No, of course they're CG. Yeah, you guys blew up $1 billion jets. All right, yeah. It's become such a bad word, I think, because so many bigger films have been rushed out, and it's a green screen and a guy in front of a green screen, or a girl in front of a green screen, and they're building an entire world, and they're just, there's no money, there's no time. And so some movies look amazing, some movies have scenes that look amazing, and then the next scene will look like shit. And so this stigma has come up where it's like, I hate CGI. I hate CGI. It's like, no. You hate bad CGI, or you hate CGI that just no one had time to make. You hate half-baked CGI. I mean, you mentioned John Wick, the blood burst in John Wick. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, like, even with time constraints, like, we probably could have looked better. But then you get a scene in, like, John Wick 2 where they're having a knife fight and they're breaking glass constantly, and every single pane of glass is digital. Like, beforehand, like, it's not like they had practical glass in place. It's all digital, which means the reflections are created,
constantly.
Which means the way it bounces when they step near it is like just craftsmanship, and it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And like 2 scenes later, it's like crappy blood coming out. So I get it, there's a stigma, but I just wish people would understand, like visual effects are it's just about the illusion. That's all it is, no matter how you get there, whether you use a computer, whether you don't.
Absolutely. Like, on just a kind of a final point on that kind of blend, on the biggest movie in terms of visual effects, there's a hand close up where a piece of leather's tightened in Avatar, especially in the trailer. And the visual effects crew that break it down with one of the visual effects supervisors. That is like a synergy of all those things together. It's just, when it's like, Damien gave you that compliment or asked you about the reflections in the newspaper ink. It's those details really make it work and make it sing, And as a friend of mine, Will Cotton, I've got to shout out to him. It's a bad visual effect for me, or bad, visual, is when something doesn't have weight, when you can't, like, a thickness to it. And it's like, oh right, okay, that kind of falls down for me. If there's real belief, like the fact that you said about the face of art on the head in the second one, that's just absolutely incredible to me. That backhanded compliment you had that is a huge compliment, really, isn't it?
Yeah. It is, and at the same time, it's just like I'm like it's very bittersweet. I
Yeah.
have to be honest; it's very bittersweet because, like, yeah, it's good for me to get like attention on that stuff. It's good for people to know that hey, these aren't just practical,
Yeah.
or they are practical, but there's a visual effect behind it.
Yeah.
Making it pulling the strings on it. Um, but at the same time, it's like, well, if maybe it's better they don't know because then it looks like I'm doing my job. So it's kind of a back and forth. But yeah, hopefully, I don't know if maybe I'll get Brett on for 4, maybe
Oh, yeah.
not. I'm sunsetting the visual effects career, honestly, which a lot of people don't know. I'll work for friends and I'll work on like if the right thing comes along, but I'm not working on most things now. Trying to do my own thing, so we'll see where it takes me.
Awesome, man. If you ever want to talk about that in the future as well and catch up or do a watch along for Street Trash or Jaws, I'd love to do something like that and just keep talking horror and movies, really.
Yeah, it'd be great. I mean, I would love. I don't know if you guys saw The Substance.
Oh, yeah,
I can't stop thinking about it. I can't.
It's one of my favorite films of the year.
Mine too. I just can't believe like how is that not number
It's
one?
like Demi.
How is
Demi
that
Moore's,
not to say
I
against
think,
the Terrifier, but
I think the performance of her career as well. I think she's.
yeah, I mean,
Like it's
just the
beautiful
vulnerability of
exactly because
her,
it feels like Lon
oh my
Chaney.
God,
That's how
putting
good
herself
I think it's
out there.
Lon
Yeah.
Chaney. That level.
Yeah, really, really, both
Yeah.
actresses in that film really put themselves out there. And the director, I complimented the director the other day, and she was like, the writer director, and she was like, she was like, oh my God, thank you so much. And I look, and she has like 20,000 followers on Instagram. I'm like, do you not have 10 billion followers and are like how are you not like this is rock star of film
That
right
stuff.
now?
It's so interesting, social media, right? How that, yeah.
I mean, this woman, this film is just, my God, I can't talk about it enough. I mean, like when you can take a scene that takes place in a restaurant and it's grosser than everything else that
Oh my
happens in the
God!
film.
Yeah.
Everything else, that's, I mean, to me, you're that's a hell of a storyteller there. You want to talk details and effects, details and story, details and character.
Yeah.
The minutia is what shapes things. Every story has been told. I'm going to quote Kevin Smith because he says this in my ear all the time. Everybody's story has been told at some point. Everything has been told, but it's your voice. It's the way you tell it that makes things unique, and that comes to the tiny details and the minutia. And holy crap, the Substance is like, yeah. I mean, that could be an entire episode just talking about the
No,
Substance.
that's
so
it. If you're up for it in the future,
Yeah.
we'll do that because I think
for sure.
I think it's got like it's so tragic. It feels like The Fly in many ways. And it's got the best boob drop on stage I've ever seen. Like it's magnificent.
It goes from this high art performance film like a Black Swan or like a Neon Demon,
yeah,
which I love Neon Demon, to South Park.
Yeah,
it feels like a South Park. Spoiler for The Substance. When the earrings go on, I was just like, "This is my movie, please."
Yeah. I remember because it played here at TIFF, and I remember she did an interview and quoted Society. This is before I had seen it, and I loved Society. And I thought immediately, I was like, because I loved Revenge. I saw Revenge. I really like her as a director. I think she's incredible. And when who's quoting Society? This is, she won Best Script at Cannes, and it's like, you're fucking quoting Society. I was like, I was like, all right, what is this? I need to see this movie, and it totally did not disappoint.
And
that's a career I'm really looking.
One little last comment on the film before we go is that the close-ups of Dennis Quaid eating the seafood It reminds me of
Yeah.
John Noble eating is it little tomatoes or something in I think it's the Two Towers, and it's just like that. Just really something about that's almost like one of the darkest things in the film for me. Just like that sinister, overfeeding almost, you know.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by like the grossness. That scene is the grossest scene in the movie,
Yeah.
where a little vagina opens on someone's face and a tit pops out. Like that's how do you do that? That's really great storytelling. Yeah, holy shit.
Well, Joshua, thank you so much, my friend. And yeah, we'll definitely catch up again. I think the three of us will be watching something together or talking about Substance or something like that. And
yeah, that'd be great.
Still talking about it.
When's
There's a lot of stuff coming out, soon that I would love to be able to talk
100%,
about. It's
yeah.
just not quite out yet.
Yeah.
So there's a Mike Flanagan, Chris Stuckman film I worked on, which is pretty big. That's going to be awesome when that hits. That's like next year, I think. I'm doing some stuff with Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit. A lot of stuff with Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
Coming up. So there's definitely some things that will be worth talking about sooner than later. So I'd love to chat again.
Absolutely,
you guys are awesome.
Man.
You're awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
And if next time you speak to Damien, thank him for the chainsaw.
Yeah, I will. I spent a lot of time looking at that shot. I did. That one's mostly practical, but again, sometimes the blood was just like had bubbles, or like the stream was coming from the chainsaw looked weird. So I had a lot of painting out and a lot of moving things around. But yeah, it's staring at a chainsaw. This is a trip.
What a life.